proposals and presentations. So we appreciate, it was a late night last night, but we're hopefully we'll get out of here a little earlier tonight. So we'll move it along. First item of business here, we've got a roll call. Mark, are you ready?
Yes, Chairman. Robin Bates Mason,
Here.
Rita Bettino,
Here.
Tom Butterworth. Here. Mark Jimsky, here. Luke Kaufman. Here. Stephen Carl.
Here.
Mike Morrow.
Here.
Maria Naughton,
Here.
Kim Norton,
Here.
Hillary Ormond,
Here.
Christina Ross,
Here.
Penny Young. Is Penny out there?
Penny, you out there?
Okay. Yeah, Penny's in a different time zone. So, Mark, I appreciate you filling in and doing the minutes.
Yes, and a reminder for everyone, since I am taking notes, for process sake, we should defer to the chairman when we're asking questions so that I can keep a proper log of everything. So he will call.
That's that's actually a good point. Oh, so go ahead.
I just want, I think, I don't know if this is still the case, but Hillary's saying that there's no sound on Zoom again.
Oh, okay.
I can hear now. I can hear now. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. Sorry, I
Yeah.
just wanted to check.
All set.
So.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. So Mark's point, the housekeeping, I do try to run a fairly informal meeting, but under Robert's rules, we have to go through the chair to ask the questions, right? So when you want to ask a question, just raise your hand. I know, we've got some new folks, and that's just the way, we just can't all ask questions at once, even though we all do want to ask the questions. So we'll keep it as orderly as possible. And with that, our first order of business tonight is, we have to see if there's public comment. Members of the public are welcome to speak to the town council on agenda topics scheduled for review and or vote. Speakers are requested to provide their name and street address. Comments will be 2 to 3 minutes, subject to total numbers of speakers. Would anyone from the public like to address the council? I see no one in the room. Anyone on Zoom have their hand raised? Okay, thank you. Move on to the next item. We have under ARPA, we have $125,000 item here for replacement of Lapham Center emergency generator, and we have Tiger here to present. Tiger, you have the floor.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So this was actually part of our fiscal 23 budget. Okay, so it went through the Board of Selectmen, went through the Board of Finance. We have a generator company that comes in and it's a maintenance company comes in and takes a look at all of our generators. They run weekly, but then they come in and do a maintenance check on them. And this generator has an engine knock. So they decertified it, basically took it offline and said, she's going to fail on you. We're not going to certify the fact that it's going to work. You might be able to get an hour out of it. You put it under load, you might be able to get a little time, but probably not. So we put it into our budget. Lapham Center is our shelter, emergency shelter for, if we have a storm or things like that. So the Board of Finance decided that didn't want to wait for the budget cycle to go forward. And they pulled it out of the budget, asked the Board of Selectmen to put it on ARPA. And then, so they approved it to go for ARPA funding. Then we just needed to come to you for ARPA funding it for the project itself. But basically the reason you didn't see it is because it was in our budget and it was an ad for this year. It wasn't a planned event. The fact that it developed an engine knock happens. It's a little bit older. And that's exactly what, the point was. We had it for replacement, but, underneath the normal budget cycle, it would have been, after authorization sometime in July. They didn't want to wait. So they said, can we, move it forward? Yes. So that's the reason for the funding request and the change.
Great, thank you. Questions?
How
Christina?
old is it?
Bill, how old is that generator?
And it was installed, they did the last community center renovations back in 2003-ish, I believe.
Wow, so it's lasted a long time.
It's done okay. We would like to see him go a little bit longer, but yeah.
Mark?
Tiger, waiting to replace this would only increase the cost, I assume.
It would, and plus it leaves us without a shelter. God forbid there was an emergency. Right now we have we just got approval for the larger emergency generator, but that's a long lead time out for us, to be able to get it. So we would have no way, we would have no sheltering capabilities, and Lapham is technically our only shelter at present. So, and then, presumably at that point in time, what we're hearing and what I heard from contractors this morning, is not going to allow me to sleep well at night. So yeah, presumably it'd either be supply chain issues or costs would increase at that point. Christine, yeah.
So it's a temporary generator, basically?
We have nothing to use. We
No,
could,
no,
we
but
can,
my point is, would you be able to move it and use it somewhere else afterwards?
if we took it out of there,
Yeah.
yeah, we could at that
Okay.
point in time, but this would not be a temporary generator. This would be a permanent installation for Lapham. And then our mobile generator would be in case Lapham fell
Oh.
or the police department or fire, any of our other critical facilities. The thought was, could you use it there? Well, yeah, we could use it there, but then the moment that the PD goes down, you'd have to pull it from there. And then move that mobile generator someplace else. So that the thought is to have all of our critical facilities with a generator. And then the mobile generator is one as a backup in
Right.
case any of those go down.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
So are there any supply
Oh, so-
chain issues?
Sorry, one sec, Luke.
Are there any? There are some, yeah. We'll see as we go along through the process, but the majority of it right now is not necessarily a supply chain issue and the fact that they're not finding the material. It's more, it's taking a little bit longer to come and the increased cost, right? So, from what I heard this morning, just on, for sidewalk replacement, right? So you have a 6x6 wire mesh that goes in, you pour the concrete on, it's a wire mesh that sits in it. A couple of years ago, we were buying them at $3. During COVID, we were buying them at $7. They're buying them now at 22. Okay, so to give you an idea, and that's just one item inside, but it'll drive the cost, right? So so there are other items that we're seeing. Granite curbing, last year I bought it at $17 a foot. Now the pricing that I got from two suppliers right now is at $22 a foot. And one of them actually has the trucking cost, it's $3,375 per load. I got 4 loads being ordered. That's a $13,000 upcharge. Those are the kind of things that we're seeing, right? It's not necessarily that they can't get it. It's a question of the trucking company. It's coming from North Carolina. That trucking company is saying, yeah, we'll come, but it's going to cost you $3,400 a trip, right? So those are the things that we're seeing now. We'll
Which
get-
in today's market, to send a truck to California is $13,000.
Right.
And shipping containers 2 years ago was about $2,500 a container, and it went all the way up to about 22,000. And it's hovering around 12. So do I need to raise my hand?
Only when you need the floor.
Okay.
Are you done?
No, I was just wondering what you're experiencing on your side, because all budgets, and I'm budget heavy in my profession in terms of on a go forward basis, and expenses have just ballooned out, but they've tightened up a little bit in the last 3 months. January, February were a little bit better than some of the more expensive, especially with logistics.
Well, we tried to take a look at the time, getting into our budget, we tried to take a look at those issues, but the problem that we have is that we're putting our budget together in December, October, November, and December, and projecting it out 18 months, right? Through a war, through, the end of a pandemic and through a war. It's almost impossible to determine exactly where we're going to be. Are we hoping that our gas prices and our diesel and oil come back down again? Yeah. Are they ballooning right now? Absolutely. So we have those issues as well, but for us, it's almost impossible to tell you exactly where we're going to be. The consultants that we ask are being told right now to not provide anything. They'll provide us guidance, but they won't write at a recommendation. They won't tell us, but they'll give us a little bit of guidance when we talk to them on the phone, but they're not putting anything down in writing. So these are the problems that we're having right now. And we'll have to battle through that through the year as we go. And then, either look for new suppliers, look for new materials, look for new sources, things of that nature. And that's nothing new for us. We do it all the time, but that's basically what we're going to have to be looking at.
Steve, Hillary online
Oh,
has
yeah,
a question.
Hillary, you have a question?
I do, and I don't know if this is necessarily for Tiger or for us, but I'm curious why we're funding this through ARPA. Is that an appropriate way to do it? I understand the budget process is a little too long to do this, and I understand the haste with which we need to proceed, but why not through a special appropriation? Is ARPA is it the fastest and that's why we're using ARPA funds, and is it an appropriate use of ARPA funds to use that for the generator?
It's appropriate. We've already bought a generator, right?
Oh,
And B,
Okay,
And it's it's your fastest route, right? So if you wanted to go to special appropriation, we would have to go back to the board, almost through the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Finance would have to be posted for 2 weeks, go to the Board of Finance. Then would have to go to the council, be posted in the paper for 2 weeks, go to the council, and then wait 8 days after publication in order for us to actually access the funds. So you're talking about a 2.5 month process, almost like the budget cycle versus right now, you say yes, and Ann can give me an account tomorrow and we can start working towards what we need to do. You know, we have to bid it under ARPA rules, but the bidding process takes us 2 weeks. You know, we can call suppliers, put the specs together, call suppliers, and we could have a definitive price within a couple of weeks versus having to wait about 2 months, 2.5 months.
Okay, I've got 2 more questions. Kim, you're first.
Hi, Tiger.
Hi.
So is this price is based on recent research, or do you think it's going to go way up? Or
It's recent research, you know, but I don't want to wait. How about that?
okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
So it could be more than 125. This is just an estimate, right?
It could be more.
And
Yeah.
is this all in? So are there other associated costs with having to replace it, or is this everything? Like,
All in.
what's the
This is all
equipment
in.
versus, okay, all right.
Any other questions? There's no value to a 2003 old generator, right? There's no, I mean, it's like,
Not
it's like a
necessarily.
car with 1,000,000 miles on it,
There's
basically.
we do have people come down and take a look at some of our surplus material that's very, very old, and then they put it out on an auction, and whatever we can get for it, we'll get for it. At that point, we'll do the same thing, but it's got an engine knock, so most people are just going to stay away from it and say it's scrap at this point in time.
Yeah, that's what I would think. All right, Mark, any other questions? The ARPA committee has looked at different uses of the money, but this one seems like it falls into the health and safety category, which is, you know, obviously something we've got to deal with, especially with the shelter. So I would support moving it along. So you want to make a motion?
Yep, motion to approve $125,000 replacement for Lapham Center emergency generator.
Second,
I'll second it.
Kim seconds. All in favor? And
I'm saying yes.
thank you, Hillary. That's unanimous.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Tiger.
All right, before we get to Jen, there was one item that we had to add to the agenda, and that was from last night. We were going to add the committee report. So I need to make a motion to add the committee reports at the end of this meeting. So you want to second that, Mark?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Hillary, we're going to add the committee reports to the end of the meeting. So
Okay,
that's
I-
unanimous. Okay, thank you. All right. Next up, we have from Health and Humans, from the Health Department, we have Jennifer Ileson, probably the busiest person in town for the last 2 years. How are you, Jen?
Oh, living a dream, Steve. Year 3 now, just to be correct on this. So the Health Department, it is the mission of the Health Department to control preventable diseases through education, inspections, and monitoring by enforcing the federal, state, and local codes, laws, and regulations for maintaining and promoting public health. Summary of our major responsibilities. Obviously, we were the lead agency in emergency response for the COVID-19 pandemic, including contact tracing and positive cases, running registration and results process for our various PCR test sites at Lapham, Paddlehead, Irwin, et cetera. The various vaccine clinics at Vine Cottage, Irwin, Canaan High School, private schools, et cetera. Responsible for carrying out enforcing all aspects of the Connecticut Public Health Code. We license and inspect all food service establishments, daycare, salons, public pools, septic and refuse trucks, private wells, conduct lead inspections and septic inspections. We review all building permits for properties on septic systems and or private well. We provide case management for all New Canaan children found to have an elevated blood level. We manage infectious diseases such as COVID-19, TB, Campylobacter, pertussis, norovirus, E. coli, et cetera, any foodborne illness as well. Respond to and investigate various complaints from landlord-tenant disputes, rodent vector concerns, and general housing complaints. Some major changes in 2021. We hired a full-time sanitarian health program planner. She's still in the process of getting her credentials. It takes over 2 years to take a sanitarian who's green and make them, let's say, street ready. So you can't even take the RS test until you work in public health for 2 years. So she's gotten her phase 1 and phase 2 septic certification. She got her food inspector written exam, but the field standardization part where the state comes down and follows you on food inspections and make sure you know what you're doing, standardize you, they're a year behind on that. We've been waiting 9 months already. So it's going to be another while before she's even ready to do that. So, because the state was working from home while we were all, working in the field. We hired 3 part-time public health nurses, all via ELC grants that I wrote and received by the health department. They have been working at all our clinics, obviously, and have been assisting with contact tracing and anything else that I need them to do. We did get all our files scanned. Thank you to our IT department for working with us on that. And so now realtors and anyone can just look up their property files to get their septic maps or whatever. And it's been especially helpful during COVID that all that's now online. I did go through last July when the state shut down all the state test sites. I went through the CLIA waiver process, which is through the federal government and state government for us to become a certified lab to conduct rapid testing, and ordered all rapid testing in preparation for a wave. Never did I dream that we were going to get Delta and then Omicron, but it came in handy. So we've been doing rapid testing ever since August, and that's been huge. Some further changes, we enrolled in the Connecticut vaccine program through the state immunization program. That's not just COVID. So now we'll be able to administer all childhood immunizations and receive free vaccines through the state health department. It's part of a Staying Up to Date campaign with state health department. A lot of children with COVID weren't going to their normal checkups. And so they've fallen behind on all their other vaccines, not COVID, MMR, DDaP, Tdap, et cetera. The ELC2 grant, that grant will run through May of 2023. That funds 2 of my nurses. That may be extended for time, not for money. So if they have shorter hours and I still have money left, instead of losing that money, they'll extend the time on it, which is good for us. We're working on now the Community Health Improvement Plan. That's a partnership that we have with Norwalk Hospital and Norwalk Health Department, Wilton Health Department, and Westport Weston Health Department. That's a state mandate. DPH is also looking to train local health departments on infection control inspections for nursing homes because they don't have the staff at the state. Not that we exactly have it at the local level, but that will be to provide better oversights of the nursing homes on infection control. Some changes that are proposed for this coming fiscal year. The biggest one is Governor's Bill 5045, an act reducing lead poisoning. This literally just happened a week and a half ago, was sprung on us. And that's going to lower the elevated blood lead level action levels. So before, when it was 5, you would do the initial reach out and you would give them educational materials or whatever. 10 to 19, you would do a risk assessment of the home, looking for, what could be possibly causing the kids' blood lead levels to be raised. Well, the proposed bill would lower that all down to 3.5 as the lowest, and then 5 as the action level. And the governor's office was on a call with local health directors yesterday, pledging $70 million from ARPA to help, make this bill happen, because obviously all of us don't have the staffing for increased caseload. So, and there's not staffing to hire. There isn't this magical workforce out there that has all our degrees and licenses and wants to deal with this. So this is pretty much going to happen. It's just a question of the funding, and then it's a tiered approach of the levels going lower and lower and lower. How that affects us numbers wise, I won't really know because we don't have access to, those lower level test results. So we'll find out, but they swear they'll give us some money, so we'll see. Moving on to cases. This is just a chart. It shows obviously the rapid rise and fall of Omicron. Right now, we're back to pre-Omicron numbers. Pretty much, we're not going to get to COVID zero. Everybody's acknowledged that now. And with home testing, the numbers are obviously a little higher than what we have here. This week, we're around 28, so. This is our inspection data and permit data on the various things that we license and inspect. The salons, we don't do till June, so it's sent out in May. The trucks are also due in June. So that's why those numbers are what they are for year to date. PCR testing, we were doing with SEMA 4 and Waveney until SEMA 4, left the COVID business January 13th. We did a grand total of 1,924 tests for positivity of 4.83%. And then after they left, we brought in Progressive Diagnostics and were able to continue with no interruption and actually expanded to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so far we've done 657 with Progressive Diagnostics. They've actually been wonderful. We get the test results back that night and people mostly use it for travel. This is rapid testing. We've done 1,429 with the rapid testing. We still get, a handful here or there. Vaccination updates. The one thing I will note, they use old population data on this. So obviously we know we're not at 99.99% as a total population because we have 800 kids in the elementary school that don't even have one dose. So that's our data on that. The health department continues to still do homebound vaccination as well. We've done 61 to date. We've also done mobile clinics at the high school, private schools, and local establishments. All last summer, we spent going to all the restaurants, the salons, the businesses, vaccinating their staffs right in their establishments. The health department also has been doing Waveney a lot the past 2 months because they are state governor's mandate of getting their staff boosted by a certain date. So we've been helping out Waveney and going there and doing vaccine clinics. The next phase is the age 6 months to 4 years old. Basically, whenever Pfizer's ready with their data wasn't ready in February when it was supposed to be done. And we don't know what the uptake will be on that. We don't know if it's going to be 25% or if it'll be, 50%. But we will have it available if anyone does elect to do so. And then this is just our budget numbers. The only real change that were added is for increase the overtime and increase the part-time a little. And then the capital request of vehicles for the health department. We only have one car right now. It's a 2004 Ford Crown Vic. So the three of us share one vehicle and that vehicle constantly has issues. And then this is our revenue and our year to date on revenue. And that is it.
Mark, questions?
You said a lot of testing is for people traveling. Does it make sense for us to keep testing then?
Well, it doesn't cost the town anything
Right.
with this agreement. So, I mean, we had 40 today. So, if you guys want to end it for your residents, you can end it. Doesn't cost the town anything.
Good to hear that it's not costing us anything.
No, there's no charge at all from Progressive Diagnostics. And they just bill insurance. And then whoever doesn't have insurance, Progressive eats the cost. And it's me and my staff who already work for the town doing
Okay, so there's
the
no
work.
there's no extra overhead.
Don't worry, there's no, we're a cheap department.
Clearly. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for everything you do because it's a crazy couple of years. And I have to say, the experience that I've had with the clinics, the vaccines, the testing has been amazing. So just thank you. I'm curious though. So a lot has happened these last 2 years and you probably had to do a lot of overtime and a lot of things you didn't expect. And I know you don't have a crystal ball to know what might happen, but what would be the difference in terms of what we've been doing, say this year, and what we are going to continue to have to do? And maybe some things we don't have to do, like what's sort of the activity comparison
Well,
that you expect?
the major difference is that they finally got rid of the whole contact tracing thing, which they should have done a long, long time ago.
Mhm.
Because that was so labor intensive of, this softball team played this team, and then you had to call all the contacts and I mean, it was just a nightmare. So now we don't need to do that anymore. And then when I talk to the schools every day, it's just, okay, this one's positive, that's it. There's no, this one ain't, and this bus or this one road. I mean, it was a nightmare and labor intensive. So that's the number one thing that's gone, that took a lot of time. And then other than that, Pfizer's now putting in for a fourth dose. So I mean, we don't know what's really going to happen. And, they keep talking about the sub variant and this Omicron other variant. I mean, whatever happens, we'll be here to deal with it again. At least this time we have ample testing. We have even home test kits that, we have a supply of now, and those don't expire to November of 2023 that we got free from the state. So I think we'll be, a little more prepared, and hopefully with the natural immunity and the vaccines, it won't be that Omicron disaster that we had in December.
So are you relying on overtime to kind of,
Well, I don't get overtime. It's only my staff that gets overtime.
okay, so you were just working overtime in general and not being paid.
Yeah, so don't worry, again, it's not costing the town anything
No,
for
but
me to be here all the time.
I guess my thought is, so are you staffed appropriately, do you think, for what is to come? And is the way you were dealing with it overtime before? I just want, in terms of staffing, like, is this the appropriate amount of staffing? And how are you dealing with overages when you have to?
Well, it's why I always have to work Saturdays or whatever. It's to catch up on all the other stuff, like the building permits and septic and blah, blah, blah. There isn't people to hire to do that. There isn't these sanitarians out there. That's why I had to convert
Right.
Shannon from planning and zoning. So it's not even like we can just put an ad out and say, hey, let's hire another sanitarian. They're not there. They're not there to train,
Right.
and I don't have time to train another person. So at least with like the vaccinations and testing, we have ample nurses. And, my nurses are great. A lot of them are New Canaan moms who work, part-time. They love chipping in. I can text them, in an hour, and they'll pop in to come do something. So, the COVID part is easy. It's the other part with like what our actual job is. And now because of all the building, COVID did a number on us. They got all the people coming in from New York who all now want to knock down houses and do additions. And then that means we have to do all the soil testing. We have to do the septic plans. We have to do the building permits. So, I think that though, that little bubble will end up bursting at some point. It's not really sustainable with the cost of construction materials. So I'm really not worried about that. But that was the main concern about the whole lead bill from local health. We can't keep taking on more. You can't keep piling on more to local health.
Steve, Hillary has her hand up.
Oh, Hillary, you have the floor. You have your hand up?
Thank you. Hi, Jen. As you know, I'm a huge fan of yours and just in awe of the work that you've done and so appreciative. I can't even put it into words, the work and what you've done for my family throughout COVID. We got vaccinated through your clinics, tested, all of the above, and we just are so grateful. I just want to add to what Rita said. Is there anything that we can do to lighten your load? I heard your presentation to the Board of Finance and was just struck by the hours that you keep and the weight that's on your shoulders, and just wondering, if with staffing or with shuffling of duties, is there anything, I don't know if we can do it from a budget perspective or if we can think beyond that for how we can make your life a little easier, because I want to keep you. I think that you're a great asset to the town. Your department has worked so hard, and we want you to know we appreciate you. and want to make sure that you feel supported and appreciated by us.
Well, thank you. That's nice to hear.
Well, I know you've taken the brunt of some unkind things as well as kind things, and it's not fair. So I just want to go on record as saying that you are appreciated by the vast majority of people in this town, and you're very supported. So I want to go on record as saying that. And you know how I feel about you and how many people in town do. So whatever can be done to make sure that you're getting the rest you need, the support that you need, whether it's through the budget or how we can figure this out, let us support.
Turks and Caicos would be nice.
There you go.
Oh, I hear you.
But no, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I'm hoping now with things going down, the numbers going down, try to recoup a little bit before whatever else hits us next. I do have a trip planned in May for Key West, so
There you
no
go.
matter what happens, I'm going.
There you go. Really have a follow-up?
Because where Hillary was going was where I was going, which is not, I mean, of course, we're grateful for what you're doing and you're working overtime, but frankly, if you walked away tomorrow, would we have to hire 2 people to take your place? And that's the point that I wanted to make, which is, it's not like, oh, we feel bad that you're working hard. Oh, but great that you are, and we're saving money because you're working double time. Not only is that not fair, it's also not prudent for us to be, having one person do the work of 2, and then if something happens when we're out, right? Like I want to make sure that we're staffing appropriately for what we need to do, period. And that we don't have surprises. So that's kind of my thought. And so have you thought about that?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Well, think about it.
All right.
We've got another question here.
Yeah, just a quick question on the lead level. So do you know, how does that work? You get a report that a child tests at a certain level and you do outreach?
So by statute, there's certain ages when the kids go to their pediatrician that they have to get tested. So they do a capillary finger prick, or they can do a venous blood draw. And then when they do that, the lab reports go to the state, and it's in one of my surveillance systems called Maven. So I have 6 surveillance systems that I have. One just for lead, one just for COVID, one for ODs, one for infectious disease, STDs, and then another that's, generic of, ticks, mosquitoes, that kind of stuff. So in the lead one, it will give you the lab reports to it of what the levels are. And then depending on what the level is what the action step is, whether it's just giving information or you're having to go and do the risk assessment, looking for, obvious things, or doing a full blown comprehensive with the XRF, lead gun, dust wipes, soil and water. I mean,
And is that the one that's moving down?
yeah, they're moving that from 20 all the way down to 5.
So if that happens, is there any way to look at today's population and see what? how
Well,
many
I already
class-
reached out to the state. We all did, because we've all kind of been caught by surprise by this, of them trying to estimate how this is going to affect all of us. Because just throwing money at a problem doesn't fix a problem if we don't have the people
The manpower
to
do it,
go
yeah.
do the
And is
inspection.
there a reason for that moving down? Like, is there a risk?
It's to
at
get
that
in
level?
line with HUD and CDC standards. Because HUD and CDC have always had the lower elevated blood lead levels. We know lead causes long-term brain damage in children. That's a known fact. And, it's not as big of a problem here. I've only had, 5 cases in the last year, but in the inner cities especially, I mean, it's a major problem. And that's where the crux of the ARPA money will probably go, is to Bridgeport, New Haven, because it's in pre-78 housing. The beauty part about New Haven, New Canaan, is when people buy the older houses, they tend to knock them down and build new. So we don't have as much older housing stock. I mean, I wish we had a way to know exactly how many we have of that left in town that have children under 6 living in residence, but it's kind of hard to parse that out.
All right, we're gonna wrap up. One more.
Question.
One more.
The 3 people with the Crown Vic,
Mhm.
and you're going places and you're doing septic tanks, how is it, are people taking their personal cars? and
Yeah,
then-
I use my personal car a lot.
So are you getting reimbursed for mileage?
No, we don't get reimbursed for mileage. And then when I got in a car accident last January, when my car was only 3 months old, I got hit going to a vaccine clinic and Kerma wouldn't pay for it. It cost me $1,000 to rent a car because they only give you $30 a day because the car was in the garage, not even because someone else was using it.
So the
And the town wouldn't pay, no.
50,000 is for 2 cars.
Hopefully, I mean, I gotta talk to Steve and I gotta look at the state what the cops use to get their cars. But we'll see. Who knows? The price of that's gone through the roof too because of the chip problem. Steve will tell you.
Don't remind me. I'm not supposed to be thinking about that. Okay. One more, Kim.
Yeah, hi, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I know we've got a lot to go through tonight. So I just want to add to the trifecta of Rita and Hillary, thanking you for all your work. And I just wanted to kind of put things into perspective. My understanding, Jen, is that there's a huge shortage of people who work in your field. So even if we could hire other people, there's no one to hire. So I just kind of, am I correct? That's what I've heard you say before, right? So I just wanted people to kind of put that into perspective, that we're really lucky to have you, but there's a real shortage in the entire state and across the country in terms of people in public health that do what you do. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Thank you, Kim. All right, so before you go, I'd like to see if there's an opportunity to invite the 12 of us to come into Vine Cottage and visit you sometime. Do like an on-site visit, because we should see the inside of the building, because we've seen so much about the outside of the building. How many people,
You could come now because we've organized it. It looks a lot
how
better.
many,
It was a hot mess before.
members have actually been inside the building recently?
Yeah,
I got a shot. I got
a
my
lot
shot.
came and got their shots, Steve.
That's why.
All right, so I think it's important that we understand, what that building is and what, what it represents. And from what I hear, it's an important piece of what you're doing right now. So,
Yeah, and every room is filled.
yeah,
you
so we
can
should
see that
actually,
mess.
we should probably get over and take a look. So we'll get that on the calendar, but thank you very much.
I'll be happy to have you all over.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jen.
for all you do.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
All right, next up, Human Services. Bethany Zaro. Another extraordinarily busy person.
All in the job description.
It's you.
All right. So good evening. I'm Bethany Zaro, the Director for Human Services. Jen's counterpart, the Department of Health and Human Services. All right, so we have the mission statement. Just wanted to put it out there, and then it will be the basis for what I explained tonight. So to help all New Canaan residents function optimally by developing programs and activities that address developmental needs, as well as by helping residents obtain appropriate social services and resources. Just trying to make it the mouse. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I did. Okay, there we go. Okay, so human services, it's the two parts of the mission statement are individual assistance and community outreach and education. And that's developing and working with other agencies to develop activities and programs that can benefit the community as a whole. So the individual assistance is divided into state and federal programs, which the caseworkers have to be knowledgeable and up on the changes and documentation and qualifications for. And then we have human services programs and agency programs in the area where we find that there's a need, and the community always comes together with volunteer donations and helping the families and the residents. The community outreach education, this is when we also partner with local nonprofits to achieve an optimal community for those in need. and for public health issues. All right, so just to break down our population, we have about 20,000 residents with about 7,000 households. And we have about over 1,000 clients within that population, which breaks down to about 460 households. And these are the households that we assist with their individual needs of programs and agencies on the local level or state and federal. What we focus on are the children, the adults, and the older adults. I further broke it down to see, so you can see whom we're serving. Once again, back to the clientele, financial assessment is done to see if this household qualifies to be a clientele in terms of financial assistance. All right, so we'll go to the state and federal programs first. This is what these are our guidelines of programs that when someone comes in needing help, we can work with applications in the area for the Connecticut Home Care Program for the elderly, the Husky Medicaid, Unite CT, which has been a very big help with the rental assistance in our area. The choices, that is for helping those navigate the health insurance programs in our state, along with Medicare and Medicaid. Marcy, the adult senior caseworker, and I are choices counselors, and so we continue our education and training on that, and are very busy during the enrollment periods for Medicare, Medicaid, everything. Then we have the Medicare Savings Program, energy assistance, which we're coming to an end to pretty soon. It's usually, it's during the wintertime months. Renters rebate, 65 and older, they have to come into Human Services to apply. And then we have the food stamps, which is called SNAP. So New Canaan, here are some numbers that are through the state. What's last updated in 2020, and you can see what's happened through since 2012. We're going up on 10 years, but data up until 2020. These are all the CADAP, that's the AIDS program. If there's anything less than 5 people, they do not put the numbers down, but we do have clients that are less than 5 that do use social human services for other programs as well as the AIDS program. So we know they are in the community, and very, very happy to help them. The Connecticut Home Care for the program for the elderly, that is for those that are older, they need help based on their financial and physical assessment. The state will provide help for them. And then the rest are CHIP, MSP, these are all health related medical insurance programs. You could just see, it's basically states what each one is, and you can go down and see that there has been an increase each year. This is due partly to the increase in population, as well as the criteria has changed, and levels of financial levels and everything. They've raised it because Connecticut is an expensive place to live. So more people do qualify based on the qualifications that they have changed through the years. So here we've broken down to the medical benefit plan area, and it's this number really, if you qualify for medical help and assistance, your income, earned and unearned income, is definitely lower for this area. So it's a good indicator of who we need to help. So these are all different types of insurance having to do with children, families, disabled, those over 65, those between 18 and 65, but you can see the numbers, and they have increased through the years. So here's the assistance with the state and federal programs. We have about 23 individuals that have been given cash food, that's the food stamps, the SNAP program, medical, which is our Husky, all the levels A, B, C, D. And definitely the medical is the largest aspect of the state and federal programs. There has to be a renewal so many times per year. So people will receive the renewal recertification. They come to Human Services and we help them fill that out. So this is an ongoing re-enrollment, enrollment. Many people, they fail to turn in their renewals. And so they lose the program. So then they have to reapply again. We do try to encourage them to, stay organized. And when they do receive something from the state, to please come in, and we are happy to help them stay on their program. So here are the town residents in the program. And then I have another column where our human service clients. Now, we don't exactly know these people, they have their rights, their dignity, their privacy, but based on what we see through the financial assessments and what they tell us, these are the clients that we feel that we know that are on these programs. There might be more, but these are definitely in our management program, documentation, and we are aware of them, and we do make sure that they're taken care of and they know to come to us when they need assistance. So the other human service programs we run our own food pantry, which is the town is unbelievable in terms of their monetary and food donations, absolutely incredible. And then we have other programs where there is a need. We find that there is a need, and once again, the community kicks in with the holiday gift programs for the children and the elderly, the back to school programs. We have a vulnerable population registry that we have definitely, it's tripled in size due to COVID. It's wonderful to find these people. Many people did definitely understood that this community is unbelievable and we do want to help, and Human Services is the place to go. And we can definitely give them resources and work with their needs. We have the Choices Counseling, the clinics. We've been doing the flu clinic since 2007, and that's for employees and residents. We helped Jen, we will with her, we do with her COVID clinic, although she's got that under control with the wonderful nurses in town. And I do blood pressure clinics at various places in town on a monthly basis. We have a wellness program, the telehealth program, and oh, sorry about that. I want to go back. Well, I will finish that up. So all in all, the programs, when we see there's a need, we want to furnish it. And with the caseworkers, adult and family caseworker, the family and children youth caseworker, Jackie, Marcy, our adult and senior caseworker, they have a pulse on the community, and if there's something that's needed, we definitely do reach out and start putting something together. Another aspect of Human Services, each year there are local resources that we use quite a bit, and as a result we grant them money so they're in our community. We have quick access to them, and as well as the residents in time of need. So this is what we've requested for this year for the grants. It really is spread out through the age spectrum. We've got everything from children through the child guidance, kids in crisis, New Canaan Cares, as well as the DV crisis and community programs like Live Girl and the RAM Council. And then the older population or disabled, we have the Get About, which is the transportation, the Meals on Wheels, and the Domestic Violence Crisis Center. So there is a spectrum of who we serve and those agencies that we need. It's too expensive to reinvent the wheel and to have in small towns like this. So to come together and use these other larger resources to have them come into our town, it's just a wonderful partnership and collaboration. So also during community outreach and education, we also use the grant agencies that we cover, as well as many other aspects of the community around us and within. So there's always some type of partnering going on, learning about new programs, new speakers, presentations, and we do, Jackie has a newsletter that she sends out. Marcy gets her information on to the Lapham Community Center and other senior-based agencies and memberships like Staying Put. So everybody's working with everybody. And the more people we work with, the more agencies we learn about and work with, the better the community functions in terms of needs. So putting this all together, we really do have an unbelievable flow chart that it's constantly going on within. We never know who's going to call, who's going to walk in that door, but we do know, like, through partnering, outreach, assistance, intervention, and the state and local nonprofits, everybody working together, it really does help the individual, the community, and it's just an ongoing fluid diagram of just wonderful people working together and creating an environment to where we can help those in need. So this is the requested budget for the year. There's not a huge change. If you have any questions, last year, gratefully, we hired Marcy, our adult senior caseworker. That's been fantastic in terms of, especially with COVID, in terms of isolation issues. She was just at Schoolhouse today having pizza with the police. She set that up, and definitely trying to erase or decrease the stigma of aging and promoting aging in place with dignity and pride. So this is where we're at.
Any questions?
Anybody?
I'd like to, can I just make another comment?
Sure.
Or just again, just to be great, being grateful. I think all the services that you just outlined, what I'm really impressed with is that you're really serving people from, cradle to grave.
Yeah.
And you could tell it's really, it's expansive, and it really serves the entire community. And I just want to say thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. It truly, it's the people that work at Human Services. There are 4 of us, but you have to love what you do, because you're interacting every day with people, and you have to be concerned about them. And we have seen a huge behavioral health uptick in need, and we're getting there. People are getting help, and we've never worked so much with Adult Protective Services, Children's Services, Mobile Crisis Unit, Silver Hill, Waveney. The police, the fire, it's just incredible. When you put yourself out there, people do come in. So we're getting there.
You feel like you're staffed up to?
Yeah,
challenge,
because the resources they're flourishing.
Yeah.
So as long as we have the resources that we can send people to, we're staffed, because we do a gentle handoff, and then we circle back around, and the positive input is incredible. We just realized, but we heard about a program, and we thought possibly Canaan Parish and Millport might benefit from it. And it's a behavioral source. And so we've just partnered with them in Laurel House. We just put them together last week. And so they're now starting a program that will come to Canaan Parish and come to Millport. And let's see if there's a need. We think there's a need. So we're going to put it out there and create a user-friendly space. And everybody's on board. So.
Steve, tell us a little bit about telehealth. You mentioned that. Who are the providers?
So the telehealth, I am the telehealth nurse. The telehealth program started about 8 years ago, and it's a wellness. It's a wellness program. We stay out of the medical aspect of it, but we motivate people 60 and older to stay motivated in exercising. So they get a blood pressure cuff and a Fitbit and access to a dashboard that I look at and we look at together, and they learn their vital signs and the importance of being motivated to stay active. We've signed up about 300 people, and I have probably over the years, definitely, I still, I have at least 50 people that still input from every day to once a week or once a month. But then I have a lot of them that have switched to the Apple Watch and things like that, and they just come in and say hi. But what it's created is a lot of the people that started when they were 65 and 70, they're now 70 reaching 80, and they're coming in for other services. My wife has passed away, and I think I need someone to help me, clean the house now. Can I get a service in? So we have, an agency, they come in. So it's good too. It's not, what we're trying to also promote is it's not just about if you need assistance with money or food. It's also age in place, come and see us. So it's a very positive influence, this telehealth program.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Great.
Tom.
Any other
Thank you,
questions?
Bethany.
Thank you. Good to see you, Christina.
Bethany, one question on the slide that you have there. That's Board of Selectmen recommended. Is that, there's no changes, right, for that budget? There's no changes as it went through the,
No, there have been no changes. This, Josh, is that, yeah,
okay. all
Okay.
right, good. Want to double check.
Yeah.
Good. Bethany, thank you for all you do. You're the
Thank
face of all these different organizations that flow through your department there. So I don't think there's a person in town that doesn't know you and appreciate what you're doing over there. So thank you so much.
great town. Love being in it. So
Thank you.
thank you, everybody. Look at all you do too. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up. The man, the myth, the legend, please.
A lot to live up to.
Yeah, he's got like 14 hats that he wears.
So well, thank you. The first budget I'd like to run through is the land use budget. Excuse me. We have a hard time determining where to fit land use, right? So it's not necessarily general government. It was in general government during the Board of Selectmen meeting, during the Board of Finance meeting. They placed them before DPW, right? So this presentation to the town council felt the same, that we should kind of put it before DPW and with health and human services, right? Because it kind of fits inside the fact that it's a regulatory agency, but it's also a service to the people. So it's a service to the townspeople, whoever wants to develop their house or what have you. So the land use departments themselves are divided up into 3 separate departments. And I put them in order of alphabetical. Usually I go ladies first, but we'll go with the building department first. It's Brian Platts. He's our chief building official. Unfortunately, Brian can't be here tonight because it's his son's 18th birthday, and he promised that he was going to take his entire family out to dinner. So obviously we have a problem there. Inland Wetlands is headed by Kathleen Holland, our director of Inland Wetlands. I believe Kathy's on the Zoom call. And then Planning and Zoning is headed up by Lynn Brooks Abney. She's our town planner and chief zoning enforcement officer. Unfortunately, she had a conflict. So my feeling is that also I'd like to do a day of everything land use sometime around May or June, right? When it starts to, the buildings, when we're out of budgets and we can spend a little time with them and talk to them about what they do and why they're doing it and what they foresee going forward. Jen gave you a little bit of a synopsis as to the fact that we are in a bubble.
Yep.
At present, the building departments, the land use departments are incredibly busy right now, incredibly busy as far as it goes, as far as what's happening in town, because people are moving into town, want to, renovate their houses. And then anyone who was here is seeing a deficiency that they want to, capitalize on, and they want to do it now because the interest rates are going to go up, right? So they're seeing that part of the problem. So they are incredibly busy right now. And
That's a much better way to do it, Tiger. I mean, we, instead of rushing through it.
Right. I think that,
Heavy back
so
and-
I can run through their budget because the budget's relatively simple. It's 1.221 million. It's $1,221,326. It's up 89,000 from last year, or a 7.9% increase. And the major driver in that is we have a change in salaries, right? So what we had was in our budget last year, we had monies in there for a part-time planner. It's someone to help Lynn. So Lynn's just not only the town planner, she's the chief zoning enforcement officer, right? So the thought being is that we were looking to hire a part-time planner to help well, there's a lot more work at the planning level. So we'd like to elevate that to a full-time position. And then there's a commensurate drop, if you see it in the part-time salaries, right? So that, and then, you know, you have your additions and deletions for Social Security and 401 contributions and what have you. And we're at that 89. But to give you an idea of where we are, especially in the planning department or planning and zoning, you have Lynn, we have our zoning enforcement officer, and she has an admin that's shared with inland wetlands. So it's basically 3 people in the department, right? Our neighboring towns have, bless you, have 7 or more, right? So if you look at, you know, our neighboring towns around, if you, you know, let's not even look at Greenwich, who's around 14 to 16 people. But even if you just go to, say, Westport, things of that nature, Ridgefield is outsourcing theirs, but they're outsourcing to a large company, right? So the thought being is that there's a lot of movement on the planning side, a lot of movement on planning and zoning, a lot to go forward and a lot to go through. So the feeling was that as we looked at it over the year, said we would be much better served to have a full-time staff. Brought it to the first selectman approved it, board of selectmen approved it, board of finance approved it, and now we're here for this. So overall, that's really it. The rest of it is flat. If you look at it, it's zeros across the board. So it's really just that one change from part-time to a full-time. That's what we would like to go forward with, because there is a need. You know, if I looked at the 2005 planning study, the 2005 planning study had someone on the order of 7 or 8 in that office. We've got 3. Okay, so if you can imagine, right? And inland wetlands had 3 proposed. They've got 1. You know, so there's definitely a need there for not only this, but probably an additional inspector, someone going out and looking at all the land use possibility, you know, problems and things that are going on, all the building that's going on, right? Because it's a very large town, and a lot going on, and they can't get out every single day. We need people out in the field to take a look.
Yep.
So I don't know if you have any questions overall for it, but
Haggard, do you feel that with all of the activity that there have been and the fact that you're, I wouldn't say understaffed, but you know, you have a limited staff, that there are more complaints or people getting frustrated with the timing of or the process itself?
We actually had a staff meeting this morning, and we were discussing exactly that process. Could we go through some process changes? What would be those changes? What could we do to try to, you know, help the user side of it, right? To be a little bit more user friendly. And in discussions with the department heads, they felt that no, there shouldn't be a change in process right now, because if we try to split the process and say building permits go one way and planning and zoning go another, that should be a double look at the permits. So health would have to see it twice, engineering would have to see it twice, everyone would have to see it twice. It would get a little confusing. One of the problems that we're seeing is that the applications are coming in incomplete. Okay, so an incomplete application sits on the desk. You call the person and say it's incomplete. It can't go any further, right? It doesn't make its round because you have to wait for that data to come in. So while you might think that I had a call recently that said that you know, the engineering department took 3 weeks to get through a permit, right? 3 weeks. That's a long time if you think that it's 3 weeks. Okay, it came in on a Monday. Maria looked at it on Monday and emailed the person on Monday night saying, I need X, Y, P, Z, you know, what I need, right? Wasn't that large of a thing that she needed, but needed it because you can't go forward, right? She's the first step, right, in the process. 3 weeks later, got the information in. She came in at 2:30 in the afternoon, and she finished the next morning and let it go. So in essence, it was in the office 2 days. It was in the office 3 weeks, but in essence, it was in front of her for 2 days, right? So that person says, you know, it took 3 weeks for you to go through. No, it didn't. It took 2 days, or actually less than 4 hours. Let's be perfectly honest, right? But that's the perception. There's a difference between the perception and what's actually happening, right? And some of them are quite complex. You know, we're dealing with a couple right now that everyone knows about, right? They're very difficult. And if you look at it, you know, the town planner, she jumped into the view to the library, and now we're at 751 Weed, right? Not much of a breather as far as it goes, right? You know, not much of a time to catch your breath and move forward. Library took up almost all the bandwidth in the land use departments for a number of months, at least 3 months for us, you know, where we tried to stay with that, to know that they were looking at problems with supply chain and wanted to stay ahead of the curve and things like that. And we tried commensurate with the other work to push that thing forward. But at the same time, you know, it sucked all the air out of the room for about 3 months, right? So, and now we have some other applications that are doing the exact same thing.
That's not, I mean, those 3 things you mentioned are outside of all the other, all
Right.
the other private stuff that goes on. I mean,
Exactly.
it's remarkable
Right.
that that department can get as much work done as they do. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, if you're looking at like, as far as our permitting schedule and what we're looking at, we are way ahead as far as revenue coming in, because there's a lot more building going on, right? And, the interesting part is the fact that, for one permit that might be small in size as far as what's coming in, has the same exact amount of inspections that takes for, say, a full scale renovation or an actual build. So we did talk about it. We looked at it. One of the problems that was mentioned with Jen was that there's not a lot of help out there, right? There's not a lot of staff that is actually trained in in these areas, right? So we were lucky to get a zoning enforcement officer, and she actually came from Derby, right? So Derby lost, we won, right? So looking forward to try to bring a planner or other people in, we're going to run into the exact same problem.
Follow up.
Yeah, just follow. So
Sure.
in summary, if residents are
Just
going
give me
through
a
the
call.
proper steps, there isn't a bottleneck on your end. It
There
sounds
is,
like-
they're taking time to go through the process, but
Right.
the majority of it is not necessarily that we're sitting on them, right?
Yeah.
There's a stack moving through, and a lot of times it has to do with the fact that, the largest complaint we get is this an incomplete application. That incomplete application stalls the entire process because it just can't go forward. Because the thought is that if something comes in, if we push it forward and it goes forward and somebody approves something and something comes in that's different, by the time it gets to the building official, he's not aware of something being different. He approves it, and now we have a problem, right? Because we approved a plan set that someone, didn't necessarily see. And everyone falls on top of each other, right? So engineering falls on top of this health, right? So as far as where the septic is located, the drainage has to be a certain distance away. If we approve one location, Jen can't approve another, right? So, and vice versa, right? So,
Thank you.
we are working through the process. You're welcome. We're acknowledging it, but it's just volume at present.
Okay, thank you. All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. That was easy. What I would like to do, Diana Ferguson is here, sorry, from the Garden Club. I'd like to have her come up and just talk a little bit about the Irwin Boardwalk. Sure. Because she's got to catch a flight. And then I'll get into the normal budget after that.
Yeah, some of us have seen the presentation, Diane, but others haven't. So it'd be great to get caught up.
Is it in our?
Judy's got a handout here, I think, too.
Oh, thank you very much.
You good? Yeah. Sit there. Yes.
What you're looking at is a map of a proposed boardwalk.
Is that Mike live?
Pardon?
Is that
Is
Mike
it?
live?
I think it is.
Yeah, move it a little
Can you hear
closer.
me?
There you go. That's
Okay.
better. Got it.
And I'll try to be brief. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to present to you tonight. For over 100 years, the Garden Club is engaged in many public-private partnerships with the town. In 1995, we began one of our longstanding partnerships, the extensive research, design, and fundraising effort to restore the walled garden in Waveney Park. We collaborated with the Waveney Park Conservancy in the restoration of the Parterre Garden and continue to maintain the gardens at Waveney. Members volunteer over 2,000 hours a year to civic projects benefiting our town. Over the past 15 years, one of the most significant undertakings of the Garden Club is the continued beautification of Irwin Park. We've planted 50,000 daffodils, over 40 trees in the park. And as a part of our very popular 3-year GOAT project, we've endeavored to eradicate Japanese knotweed and other highly invasive species from the western side of the park. The town has installed close to a mile of flexi-paved trails, thanks to generous contributions of the community of nearly $500,000. We completed the final loop of the trails in 2019, following a successful fundraising effort. To date, the Irwin Park Committee has received no direct funding from the town for capital improvements. The Irwin Park Committee completed an extensive search and retained Stimson Landscape Architects from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to work in collaboration with the Garden Club to prepare a long-range plan. They were subsequently recognized with a 2021 Landscape Architecture Firm Award from the American Society of Landscape Architects. That was lucky because we had already hired them. We held several planning sessions since last spring, which focused on creating a sustainable vision of Irwin Park. Our goal was to create a comprehensive and cohesive master plan that would provide a roadmap for the future. The Parks and Recreation Commission approved our proposed schematic design for a boardwalk approximately 900 feet in length, 8 feet wide, through the wooded western edge of the park. It would conform to the contours of the property and be composed of crushed stone and locust wood. We have added a lookout observatory to enhance the experience and allow for children and adults to have more quality time in nature. The plan meets all setback requirements and is ADA compliant. The establishment of this boardwalk through Irwin Park would further enhance the town's Green Link Trail connecting Irwin Park to other land trust properties, along with the Nature Center and New Canaan Parks. The biodiversity and ecological health in this area lends itself to a vast oasis of birds, butterflies, insects, frogs, and other species. By providing more trails with varied experiences, we believe it will enormously enhance the quiet pleasure of being in the park. We can all agree that during the recent pandemic, the importance of open space was amplified worldwide. Recent scientific studies conclude that spending more time in green spaces significantly boosts or improves mental and physical health during these stressful and uncertain times. The boardwalk is our only request for funding of a capital item by the town. All of our beautification projects have been funded by the Garden Club through the endowment and generous contributions from our members and the community. Irwin Park has grown in popularity and continues to see an increase in visitors in all seasons. We respectfully ask for your support for this very worthy project that would significantly enhance Irwin Park for the New Canaan community. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Diane. In front of you have a schematic of Irwin and the proposed boardwalk. And just to remind everybody that so far, this has gone through Board of Selectmen, actually Park and Rec, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and it's moved to us. We're not going to vote on it tonight, but this is our chance to ask questions because it is one of the capital items that'll be coming up. So any questions for Diane while we have her?
I have a question. Diane, how high off the ground is the boardwalk?
Well, we're attempting to keep it as low as possible. So that means that over where it's completely flat, there'll be crushed stone. And then over the wetlands, it has to be above a little bit. So as you increase the height of it, it becomes much more costly because you need rails. And so our goal is to maintain the lowest, follow the contours of the property, and the lower it is, the safer it is. We'll have a little rail on it as well. So people walking or kids riding bikes will be safe, but it will be as low as possible. And that really significantly reduces the costs.
We're trying to stay away from a handrail. So a handrail would be a 30-inch drop. So we're going to try to stay well below that. So as Diana mentioned, we're going to come around with crushed stone in the areas that we can, obviously has to go through wetland review. And then at that point in time, the thought is that it'll be about 2/3 crushed stone, 1/3 boardwalk material through the wetter areas. And we would try to keep that as low as possible, as she mentioned, with basically an edge guard, so that if you were in a wheelchair or had a stroller, you wouldn't necessarily wheel off the edge. But we're trying to have it be as close to water height as possible to prevent the fact that at that 30-inch height, we've got to have a handrail. At that 30-inch depth, we've got to have a handrail.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maria.
I think it's a great idea. I'm just curious how wide and what kind of wood are you
Well,
using for it or
we would
material?
like it to be 8 feet wide, and there's different types of wood that we could use. And we would like to use locust wood, but I think as we all know, costs are ranging, and I think Tiger's he's good at cutting costs, so he'll have some suggestions. But locust wood would be something that would last, and it would be lower maintenance than other types of wood.
What about like the fabricated products? Keep costs down, all that?
Thought about those. They get very slippery in the dew.
Hmm.
So we had that problem at Bristol. We used a fabricated product for a long time, and you necessarily couldn't even see the moisture on the product on the decking, and then it gets very, very slippery at that point. So we did look at that. We can certainly look at it again, but the thought was, as she mentioned, a locust wood. We priced it out according to the pricing that we were receiving from 2 boardwalks we did at Bristow, and then work that had happened at the Nature Center, all very similar. A boardwalk sitting on a diamond pier. Diamond pier is a concrete block and it's got rebar through it. That's reduces the amount of excavation that has to happen, things of that nature. And so we priced it out according to that. And we think that we're hoping that we'll hit that sweet spot.
Right. Luke?
Has there been any thought in financing multiple construction projects throughout the tri-state area, changing to Mike's point, something more of like a recycled plastic or something? And I know you said the dew becomes slippery. You could change the consistency of what people are walking on or rolling on, that honestly would be a lot more cost effective on a go forward basis, and be able to maintain it to a high level than it would to be locust wood.
Well, we can certainly take a look at that, but the preferred wood at present from the Garden Club and others, and almost everything else that we're building with a natural product, not a
So
not
it's more
necessarily
aesthetic.
It's both, but yeah,
Okay.
you know, there is
That would
there is
make
definitely an
sense.
aesthetic nature to it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Robin first. and then Kim.
I'm just wondering, I know the trails are supposed to be closed in the winter, but people still walk them. Does this bypass the ice patch that you get there? So that, you know, that where it doesn't melt. So this would help people, even though they're not supposed to walk on it in the bad weather, that it would bypass that?
It absolutely does.
Okay.
Exactly where it's very shady and very icy. And yes, people walk all winter long. And
Right.
this would be a perfect way to bypass that, which is one of the real benefits and safety.
Because I see people trying to do it anyway.
I do it. I walk on the side of the trails.
I
and
don't think it's a liability just because people aren't supposed to, but who knows? But, and then the other question is the Hillside Terrace, the Garden Club's taking on the full cost of that themselves, right?
We've,
Or is that for another time?
that's for another time,
Okay.
I think.
Kim.
Sounds like a great idea. I've seen owls as I've walked by there, and I've seen the icy patch as well. So has this been approved by wetlands, or I'm just
No, not at present. We're working towards everything. So at that point in time, the Garden Club will go forward and hire to put forth the final plan. And at that point in time, we'll go forward. Right now, we just have a schematic that was presented by Stimson Associates in their master plan. That'll be defined to a better extent to a biddable product, right? So we can actually bid it to a contractor, either with Stimson or possibly Richter and Segan. Richter and Segan did the original work at Irwin Park, is very familiar with the area, and actually had a boardwalk in their original master plan and in their original trail network. It just, in the initial process, it got cut out due to cost, right? So when we had barely enough money to do the path that we had, and then it actually, we needed fundraising to do the flexi pave on top of it. But at the time, it basically got cut out from costs, and now we'd like to bring it back.
so did they consider like disruption of wildlife or any of, because I know there's a lot of stuff that's in that area in terms of the building and people walking through and all those kinds of things. I was just curious.
Well, that'll be taken into consideration during that entire environmental review process going to inland wetlands.
All the native plants are going next to it, right? Where the goats were?
Yes.
Being replanted with natives.
Yes, yes.
Rita.
So I also love this idea and I love the fact that you're increasing the access to all this beautiful land. I also think it makes sense to stay within the character of New Canaan and the area to do natural. I also think it's important to not, count your pennies, or what is it, be penny wise, pound foolish, because I'm a daughter of a builder and a mason, and I've seen what happens when you don't do that and what can happen with maintenance and repair. My only concern really is timing, because materials right now are at an all-time high. And so I don't question this project in the least. I do question the timing, just given supply chain and the costs of materials. I think we should do it right. And I think we should do this project. My question is timing, just given, our environment right now. And with this, is this prudent for the town to undertake at this time? That would be my only question.
Well, the pricing we're using is basically almost pre-COVID pricing, right? So it's either, or initial COVID pricing without your supply chain issue, right? So everything was kind of, while we did have problems acquiring the diamond piers, and they're still pretty hard to get, the price on them hasn't escalated to the point where you'd say, oh, it's cost prohibitive, right? To put in all the footings for it. So the thought being is that we'd like to, get approval for it, right? It's a set at $175,000, right? Budget item, right? So the thought being is that the proof will be in the pudding at that point in time. If we wind up going out, we find out that there's a material issue or a supply chain issue, or the fact that the materials are way too expensive, that's going to be, that'll be followed out in the bid, right? So that'll be flushed out in the bid. At that point in time, it might be too rich for us at present. So at that point in time, we might have to step back and say, okay, we have the money, we have the design, we're going to have to wait a little bit, and then we'll rebid it at a different time. But we won't know until we actually, go forward and see, right?
Yeah.
We have to test the market.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing renovations right now and costs are going through the roof still, and they're not, so that's my only.
Okay, thank you very much. One question, the way the boardwalk is mapped out here, obviously we've contacted the neighbors, because that's always something that we're concerned about. So are the neighbors on board on this?
Yes, we've talked with several, and everyone seems very, very supportive so far. We'll continue to do that, but we've had very positive.
Good, because I mean, you definitely want to get outreach to them and make sure that this is.
Oh, absolutely,
You're
absolutely.
extending it closer to, whoever is living in that. area,
Yes,
so.
and they're.
Yeah. Oh, so if they're supportive, I mean, obviously you'd get to use this, which, any of the neighbors that are in that area, it's such an asset to be able to walk and.
The neighbors
run.
love the park. I mean, I love the park. I live near it. I go every day. It's a wonderful place. And I think now more than ever, it's just it will be such a tremendous improvement. I've seen, you can barely find parking spaces. There are so many people that use the park. The goats brought in just so many children, and it's a wonderful asset for the town. I'm just so glad that that you all have contributed your time and making the town the wonderful place that it is. And I hope you'll support moving this forward, because it's a great idea. And I also think we should do it as quickly as possible for the reasons that you're saying, supply chain. Tiger worked very hard pricing things out, and I just really hope that we can move forward as quickly as possible.
Thank you
for
very much.
everyone.
Thank you, James. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a nice trip.
I just asked a quick question to Tiger on the
Yes.
transition here.
Yes, sure.
Don't you think it's true that price increases happen? That's a past fact. They're not necessarily, that trend is not necessarily a predictor of future prices. I mean, we're not smart enough to know whether prices are going to go up or down from where they are today. Is that correct?
That's correct. We don't know. I mean,
So-
we're in unprecedented times. We're in unprecedented times for the past couple of years. So yeah, we're, and then like I had said prior, right, we took a snapshot in time. Now we're in March, right? But some of this money that we're going to be spending, proposed in the budget is 15 months from now, right? So by June 30th of next year, we'll be finalizing, we'll be finishing that fiscal 23 year, right? So we don't know at present.
When you try to predict most markets, it's roughly a 50-50 shot. It could go up or down from where it is now.
Yeah.
How the hell do you know?
Correct. We don't know. We took, so some of the items that we did, we added in, we added in inflationary cost. At the time, inflation was at 6.2%, added in inflationary cost. Some of the other ones, we said, well, we'll add $1 per gallon. We'll add $1.25 a gallon kind of deal. If we're talking about fuel, things of that nature, because we necessarily couldn't, no one was selling futures, or they were selling futures, but they were futures that we didn't want to buy. So yeah, we don't know. And I'm hoping that there'll be a reset. We're hoping there'll be a reset. It might not come back down to the numbers that we're currently at, or that we were seeing before this problem. Because there's always, obviously, right, it goes way up and then it'll come back. It might not necessarily come back to where it was, but it'll come back down somewhere below where we are now. We just don't know, so we're giving it our best shot, and we'll take a look. We also have to be, cognizant of the fact that, right now our budget is sitting at 6.3%. Okay, 6.3% increase. I have never been at 6.3%. Okay, since I've been presenting these budgets since 2007. So I was, my statement to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance was I was freaking out at 6.3. Right. So, but inflation at that point in time was trending at 6.2. Right. So, and then it went to 7.15. Right. So, somewhere in there is the number. Right. But so, the Board of Finance said, well, you got to ask for what you got to ask for. It's there. And then we'll see. But that, to give you an idea, we also had the thought of that there has to be an upper limit for our request, right? They can't just be that we're going to say, oh, we're going to put an inflationary factor on everything and call it a day, right? That's irresponsible, right? So we try not to do that. We have no fat in our budget ever. What we ask for is what we need, and then we're trying our best to put in the number that we think it's going to be on average for that entire 12-month period, 6 months in advance of when we start. So, in essence, that's where we're at. So yeah, we don't have a crystal ball. If I had a crystal ball, I might not be sitting here. First off, we thank you for having us. It's 8:33. I know Dr. Lutzy worked really hard last night. Okay. He didn't take a breath. He didn't drink. He didn't do anything. So I'm going to do my best, but I haven't gone through this thing in an hour and a half. Okay. Hour and a half is about it. So I'm going to, I'll try to get her down to an hour, but that's about where we're at. I can certainly come back and answer questions. I have absolutely no problem with it.
Yeah,
but
maybe that's what we'll do is we'll have you present and then we'll have you back again. Unless you want to go in, we'll see how we do. And
let me roll through it. And if
yeah.
there's something that you want to shout out and it's quick, then we'll hit it. If it's not, then we'll, continue to go, but we'll do our best.
Hey,
So
Tiger.
sure.
I think it'd be great. Can you introduce?
I'm
your
going
staff?
to right now because that's the first slide. All right. So
Well, I got
a lot of brand new faces there. They were actually saying it. They were like, wow, brand new faces all around. So this is us. This is the DPW. We are 8 divisions, 58 strong. All right. So I'll go through everything. I didn't do ladies first during land use, but we'll do ladies first now. So the head of our engineering department is Maria Coplet. She's on Zoom. She's at home at present. I gave her, I said, why don't you stay home with your family? And our senior engineer, Joe Zagorinsky, is down there as well. He just came on the screen. And then in front, the first gentleman is Bill Osman. He's our superintendent of buildings. To his left or to my left there, that's Don Smith. He's our superintendent of the transfer station or solid waste. So anything you want to know about recycling or MSW, that's Donnie. The gentleman next to him with the white mustache looking very regal, that's Jim Rogers. He's been running our sewage treatment plant for, we'll just say 40 plus years. Okay. All right. So behind him, the gentleman in the gray, that's Todd Decline. He's our assistant park superintendent. He's actually shouldering a lot of the burden now because John, next to him, John Howe, is now our interim director of Parks and Recreation. So Todd is being elevated to try to shoulder that burden since John is now in an umbrella between 2 departments with Steve's unfortunate, passing, right? So, and then next to him right here, sitting alone, is Mose Zachary. Everyone knows Mose. Mose runs our highway department. Mose has been running our highway department since 2007, but he's been here for 42 years. Wow. 42 years. So that gives you the idea of where we are and who we are. I'll run you through. Basically, I did an analysis 5 years ago. I did an analysis this time just to take a look based upon that we were going to, announce everyone. And I took a look at, what is our average age, right? We're starting to age up, the profession of public works. Some people are coming in, they're starting to come in now. They're realizing it's a profession, but somewhere in the middle there, we had a lot of staff that is getting on in years, so to speak, long in the tooth. So our average age is 52, right? So you can look at it 2 ways. There's always 2 sides of every coin, right? So our average age might be 52, but I look at the fact that we have 952, almost 1,000 years of experience in our departments running the town, okay? So if you take a look at it, the highway department has 450 years of experience through all the gentlemen that are there, right? So while we're looking at possibly a huge brain drain coming in the next 5 to 10 years, we're taking strides towards actually minimizing that, right? We had Todd elevated to the assistant superintendent for parks a couple of years ago. So he's been looking at that because, you know, John eventually will retire as well. And now we have someone who's basically mirroring Mo's, right? His name is Lou Boise. He's an excellent employee doing a fantastic job. And he's starting to mirror Mo's on everything that's going on as far as how to run the highway department through every single storm and every calamity that they actually have to have. And then Jimmy himself, we have our chief operating officer for the wastewater plant, has been running side by side. Nick has been running side by side with Jimmy for quite some time. We're hoping to elevate Nick into Jimmy's position so Jimmy can fully retire. Jimmy's retired and he's actually back working for us. And then he's running side by side with Nick, and we're hoping that eventually Jim can actually retire and enjoy his retirement come July, and Nick will take over in full bore. And then we'll actually have to hire somebody across the board that we already have eyes on who to hire at that point. So we are, you know, trying to cover that all as we go. But like I said, two sides to every story, you know, and the fact that, you know, we might be getting a little long in the tooth. I like the fact that we've got, you know, we've got the town well covered because we've seen pretty much everything, you know, that ice storm a couple of weeks ago notwithstanding, right? So that one little blip. So my Board of Finance liaisons and the Town Council liaisons asked me to kind of give you an overview of what we do, right? To try to, you know, everyone else comes in and gives you a dog and pony. And normally I got to follow the Health Department and Human Services. And they say that they gave out 25 Christmas trees and 40 turkeys. And I get to come in here and say, oh, by the way, my budget's at 6.3%, right? So we said we give you a little idea of how we touch everyone's lives, right? So this slide is from National Public Works Week from 2019. And the slogan was, it starts here, right? And actually it starts and ends here. So your day starts what we call with, you know, we can say first flush to last flush, right? So you wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, right? You're visiting Jimmy Rogers, okay? So at that point in time, you get up and then you want to cook your breakfast. We're hoping that you're going to recycle your food scraps and you're going to recycle any of your products that you have, and you might have to take out the garbage. That's going to visit Donnie, right? Then you're going to have to leave your house at some point in time and you're going to have to drive on one of our roads to get there. That's your engineering and administration, and especially our highway department. Okay, everywhere you go, that's the highway department as far as it goes. Then we're hoping that you might have to come in and do some town business, maybe pay your taxes, come in, take out a building permit. And that's our town buildings, right? So now you visited one of our beautiful structures that we're trying to maintain. And then in the end of the day, we're hoping that you're going to relax in one of our beautiful parks, and that's our parks and our tree service, right? So our tree warden at that point in time. Then at the end of the day, you go back home, you recycle a little bit more of your food scraps after dinner, brush your teeth again, go to bed. You know, but in essence, you know, we are the only department that touches you holistically. Every single person in the town, we touch you every single day. And we hope that our service, you know, that you like our service and that you like it. I try to tell, we are in the business of providing a service, right? But we are also in the business where the townspeople don't get a say as to who is running the show, in essence, right? So they're a captive audience. So we actually have to do our job twice as good, because they don't get to actually say who's here, right? So we actually have to be that much better, because they could theoretically, for every other position, every other thing that they have in their lives, they could hire who they want. This is the only time where they can't hire who they want. So we have to make sure that we're on the top of our game every single day. So with that, I'll roll right into it. So our budget overall, including sewer, this year is at $11.594 million. It's up $695,000 from last year, 6.38%. And I will try to run through every single one of those ramifications for you as we go forward. This is just operating capital we'll cover after this. So if we run, you know, and take a look at what I did was I took a look at our budgets, as I mentioned, from 2007 all the way to 23, and kind of wanted to graph them out so you could see it actually visually, right? And then what I did is I plugged in inflation, okay? And that inflationary line, that red line, actually starts in fiscal 7. And in fiscal 7, the highway department was at $2.5 million. And so I started the trend at that point in time at $2.5 million, and then factored in inflation all the way through. And if I take a look at it just in the highway department alone, in this 13-year time frame or 14-year time frame, the highway department started off at 2.65 million, and inflation at that point was at 2.58 million, okay, accordingly. And then by the time we got done, inflation was at 3.55 and highway was at 3.38. So starting with the same number, I get to the point where the highway department increased $730,000, but by the inflationary rates, everyone else increased by 970. So in essence, we were $240,000 to the good. if you look at it from that standpoint. So every single year that we have a zero-based budgeting, or we're at 2% or less, and we're at 2% or less when our staff, right, is getting a 2.35% increase or a 2.5% increase, right? So they're getting a 2.5, and we're still holding ourselves at 2. Something is giving, right? At that point in time, we're either having to find a better process, a better material, a better way to do things, or, you know, necessarily cut services. And we haven't cut services. You know, we cut one service, one in 2008, 2009, and it fell flat the moment we cut it. We had a $10,000 line item in our budget for garbage pickup on Sundays. Okay. Right. So it was overtime garbage Sundays, and the Board of Selectmen and everyone said, cut that $10,000 line item. First selectman said, cut it. Jeb Walker said, cut it. We said, okay, fine, we'll cut it. So we cut it. The first Sunday came and we didn't pick up garbage. And the amount of calls that we got, and the first selectman called on Monday, he said, that's never happening again. Pick up the garbage on Sunday. But meanwhile, we lost $10,000 out of our budget, right? So we had to roll that back in again and start over again. So we've got one service, didn't work out very well for us. So our feeling is that we just need to find a different process and a different way to basically, you know, skin the cat to make it work. So if I take a look and we go forward, you know, just to give you an idea of just even, you know, what we're seeing for pressure, right? So I like this one only because it's a Big Mac, right? So a Big Mac, the cost of a Big Mac in 2000 was $2.50, okay? And if we went by inflationary measures, all right, it would be somewhere on the order of what you're seeing, okay, close to 3. But it's actually today at $5.67, right? So the inflation necessarily doesn't show you exactly what's happening in the real world, what's happening in our world when we're trying to buy supplies, or necessarily for our staff who's needing to buy food, right? So I give you that one just because it's kind of fun. And then if I took a look at our overall budget, how we break out, our salaries are at 49.4%. They're actually less than half of what we, you know, of what our overall budget is. 2 years ago, when I did this analysis prior, it was at 52%. So now we're seeing a definite rise in our utilities and in our supplies and things of that nature. So if you're looking at, you know, the overall change, you can see the overall change, right? Our supplies have come up and our utilities have come up. Those have been the 2 drivers, and necessarily the outside contractors that we hire to do some of the work that we have. Our tree service is entirely outsourced, right? And our building department is entirely outsourced. Dr. Lutzy talked about the fact that he has the pleasure of having in-house staff. We don't have any in-house staff. So if we have a plumbing problem, an electrical problem, an HVAC problem, we are hiring out to do that. We have one individual in our building department, Bill, with one maintenance man and an admin. That's it. Everything else is a phone call, and we hire a contractor to do it. We bid out pretty much everything that's going on, but we necessarily have to do that. We asked to partner with the BOE at one point in time, but it's very, very difficult because they're busy all the time. And they couldn't necessarily say, oh yeah, we can give you the guy 1 day a week. Couldn't even promise 1 day a week. And I can understand that from their standpoint. They have to keep the school up and running. They can't necessarily say we're going to get a guy on a Friday and they have an HVAC problem on a Friday, and then they got to take the guy back. So we did ask the question. We had a meeting with Dr. Lutzy and Dr. Keating and Cheryl Jones from our HR department, and we necessarily just couldn't find a synergy there. Doesn't mean we can't keep trying, and we will. It's just a question of we just couldn't find a synergy at point. And the fact that the amount of work that we're putting out on a contractual basis doesn't trip a full-time salary for one individual, right? So the amount of electrical that we put out, or the amount of HVAC, or the amount of plumbing that we put out doesn't trip for one guy, right? And normally when we're actually out hiring, we're getting 2 people at once, right? So we're getting 2 people to come in. So we have taken a look at it. It's just necessarily at this point in time, the amount of volume that we have isn't allowing us to make any moves as far as, you know, with staffing. But we have looked at it because it would be nice. Dr. Lutzy mentioned the fact that you get a little bit of a, you know, the fact that you get a little pride in your work, right? Doesn't mean that our contractors aren't prideful. It's just a question of, you know, in essence, that staff person you open is even more prideful in his work, right? Because he's basically taking a task immediately. You know, he fixes a light and it doesn't work. He's taking a task immediately on it, you know? So we have taken a look, but that's the overall nature of where we are. And this is how we split out a lot of what we have. I know Fire talked about it last night. He's got like 96% that's, you know, non-discretionary spending, right? Or close to 99%. I would argue that pretty much all of ours is as well. We have very little that we could say that we cut that won't affect someone in the community adversely, where the phone won't ring. You know, I venture a guess that it doesn't matter where we would go, the phone would ring. We cut our services as far as what we were doing for mulching around our town buildings and weeding and our town buildings. And the moment we stopped that building, the phone rang about that building. And then they started looking at other ones as well. So it wasn't, and then the next year, we added it back in. We were asked to go down to 0 or less than 0. We cut certain services out and the phone rang immediately. And at that point in time, we realized that people are paying attention and they want what they want, right? They know what they want, they understand what they want, and this is what they want. So then we had to put that service back in. We had to build it back into our budget. So if I take a look at administration, right now, that budget is $320,376. It's up $8,000 from last year, a 2.76% change. And I'll be quite honest with you, I have an admin in my budget, Christy Reddy. She's our DPW coordinator. She runs pretty much everything behind the scenes. And she's allowed or capable for overtime. Last year, I pooched the estimate. I only had her down at $1,000 for overtime, and she was trending at 9. I don't know exactly how that went, whether I wrote a 1 and thought it was going to be a 9, but I was $8,000 short. So that entire line is just putting that back where it should be based upon the average that she's been running, and it's necessary. During COVID, she was the only person in the office every day running COVID, running the entire department herself through that. And then everyone else at that point in time was sent home being Zoom. We had one person here. So, it's a necessary, it was a necessary line. The next is my engineering department. It's at $360,000. It's up $7,000. And that's, again, just basically an increase in our salaries for our senior engineer. That's all it is. I took a look at where our senior engineer lied on the overall scheme as far as our supervisory staff, where he was and what his position is entailing right now, as far as what he came in at and what he is being tasked to do. Now he's in charge of a lot of our building capital projects. He will be the sole man responsible for the police department as it goes forward. He's been the sole man responsible for the police department as it's been working its way through the police building committee and others. And then he's been building the bridges that we've put together so far, and then other things that we've had, all of our CHP projects that came in that worked with the BOE and in town, he did them as well. So his overall job description has changed dramatically from what it was when he came in to what it is now. And the $5,000 doesn't even cut it, to be perfectly honest with you, to get him to where he should be based upon where he is here and where we are in our region. If I go forward to town buildings is standing at 1.223 million. It's up $173,000 from last year, or 16.5%. And if you take a look at the budget lines for town buildings, the outside contractor line and the property cleaning, we've actually increased the scope. We've added buildings to our property cleaning. A lot of the bathrooms that we have now that we're trying to keep open 24, basically 24/7, 365 throughout the year, that we've winterized. We have those. We have some other buildings that we've taken over, so the scope has changed a little bit. And on the outside contractor line, in the past years, from fiscal 19 all the way through, every year we were coming back for a special appropriation, basically coming back to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and Town Council for a special appropriation to make up the difference between what was happening on the maintenance side for all of our buildings. We have 57 buildings, and every year they get 1 year older, right? So even though Town Hall is brand new, it's not necessarily brand new anymore, right? I still consider our wastewater treatment facility brand new since I built it with Jimmy. It's 23 years old, 25 years old. It's not brand new anymore. It's old, right? It's older, right? So if you kind of consider that there's a depreciation to that building, the increased maintenance costs go along with it. So based upon a 3-year average of where we were on outside contractors, I said, we need to necessarily hit that sweet spot and actually put it in the budget. So we don't have to come back. We don't have the pressure to try to keep everything down inside a box, and we can then just go forward and do the work that we need to do based upon what we've been seeing, right? Based upon the history of where we are, and the numbers are not going to come down. They're just going to either stay the same or increase. So the thought is to then reset and be at a point where we don't have to ask for a special appropriation. I think that's unfair to us and it's unfair to the boards. So that's why we're asking for it straight out. And if you look at that line item across the board and take the average, that's the average on that number. Have you any questions on anything so far? Do you want me to keep going, Steve? What do you want to do? Yeah.
I have a question regarding the wastewater treatment plant. What's the story with Kelly Green?
Oh, let me get there. Well, I'll actually answer that now. It's okay. So with Kelly Green, it's an interesting question. At present, we are taking a look at that location, right? As far as what necessarily needs to happen. In the past, I had Sean Sojour, she's one of our admins down in the building department, research all the Board of Finance documentation for since 50 years, let's say, even further back to see exactly what's happened. And what we're noticing is that any addition to the sewer system, okay, be it if you were adding a parcel because the septic system failed, or areas where way back in the 50s, they might have increased, you know, they added a line because they wanted to add a line, they wanted to add a street in at that point in time. Or most recently, I think it was in the 70s, they added, I think it's Raymond Street off of East Avenue. Okay, it was about 300 feet of piping at that point in time. What they did is they billed every single resident back. Okay, that thought whereby it was $20,000 at that point in time to put in 300 feet of pipe. Okay, and then they put they basically billed back the residents. So we're taking a look at that and seeing if that's been the application across the board. We're not there yet as far as our research going forward, right? To see exactly what would be, how we would treat everyone equally at present. So that's what we're trying to get to is what is our path forward, you know, and then how would we treat everyone, the previous applicants and applicants now, how would we treat them fairly?
And what's your timeline?
Timeline as we're moving forward on it. You know, we have other things that are a little bit more pressing, to be quite honest, but we are looking to do that. I'm looking to hire an outside consultant to help us with that prospect of what would necessarily be the design, right? So my feeling is that the town should take a look at that, right? First, and see what the first go might be on a design, whether it would be an easement or whether it would be a pumping station, things of that nature. And then what would be the magnitude of that number, okay? And then how many people would be affected? And then what would be that commensurate cost across the board? Should we apply it that way? Or what would be the cost towards the town?
I just think that, thank you for that update, but I think that to let other projects get in before.
I'm not
that,
saying that
because-
we're not pressing forward with it as well, but they're,
Okay.
you know, but so it's a little bit of a misstatement. We are moving forward with it, but you know, it takes a little time for that, you know, in that regard. But we are looking, I spoke to the first selectman, he was in agreement that we should necessarily look to place this forward on our end first to see where we are. But I'm also, like I said, I'm trying to take a look and see, was there an instance where the town paid for everything? Was there an instance where it wasn't, you know?
But
or
can
was
we
it always
move
cooked for?
ahead while we're looking?
You can,
as
we
to-
are. So it's a dual process.
Okay,
If that's the
thank
best
you.
way to describe it.
Thank you.
Anything
Keep
else?
rolling.
All right. So on the town building side, I know you guys were asking a little bit about fuel last night. So I put this slide together to give you an idea of where we stood over the past years from fiscal 12 forward, right? So in the blue is what we were purchasing our gas, and we normally purchase our gas and our diesel and our fuel oil on a future, right? And what were our consultants telling us? And then what was the average cost in Connecticut for those items? And if you look, apart from a little bit of a glitch where we got out of cycle a little bit in the 15-16, got a little tweaked in the 15-16, we have done exceptionally well listening to our consultants and deciding what we were going to do. At present, they're telling us not to buy futures. They're telling us to do a rack rate right now, right? Which is good and bad, okay? Because every day you have no idea what you're going to get. But at the same time, that's where we're at. That's the nature that we're in. If we try to buy a future now, we think it's foolish at this present moment. So we're going to have to, I won't say use the word suck it up. We're going to have to basically say, okay, we're buying now. We're going to buy now. We are looking at the possibility of changing our structure of where we're keeping our fuel, because we have certain areas where we're keeping fuel. Highway department, we've got some of the parks, we've got some open fuel areas at fuel tanks at the schools, at the high school. And we're trying to see exactly if we can actually pre-buy at a favorable rate, a large volume, and then draw off of that instead of actually going a rack rate through. So we're pricing out right now what we might be able to do and putting forward a game plan whereby we might convert a diesel tank, you know, or a heating oil tank to a diesel tank, because that's pretty easy, right? At that point in time, you can, you know, heating oil, you can run on your off-road vehicles can run on heating oil. Your on-road vehicles have to run on diesel. But at that point in time, trying to convert, say, other ones through, and then maybe convert one of our two heating oil tanks or a diesel tank to a gas tank so that we can actually purchase a little bit more gas. Our run rate on our gas is a little higher, obviously, than our diesel, right? And fuel oil right now, we're kind of coming out of winter, so we're doing a little bit better. And then hopefully by the next year, we're going to have a little bit more of our facilities on gas. We won't necessarily see that problem again. So right now we are purchasing off the rack for For our gas and our fuel oil and our diesel, we still are under contract through June 30. You know, just the way that we buy, we kind of fell out either on our volume or on the fact that the timing, there's a timing issue and a volume issue on both. So our heating oil just left sometime in February. It was probably the time when we came out of our quantity at that point in time of pre-buy. And we were out of our cycle for gas at the end of the December 31st, right? Normally we bought our gas December 31st, we bought our heating oil on June 30, right? It's usually the best way to buy those. So now we're getting a little bit out of cycle, but our consultants are telling us to stay out of cycle, and based upon their progress or their success rate from before, I've got to listen to them because they're telling us they've been successful for the past 10 years. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Any other questions on town buildings? We can go. On the highway department is at 3.379 million, up $72,000 from last year. And that's strictly in our salary line items. We just settled our budget, our DPW contract for our men, and then a commensurate bump in utilities. But the rest of it across the board is pretty much zero. The only item you'll see in there is I put $15,000 in outside contractors. Normally every year we go in and we clean out the downtown when it snows, right? So if it snows around December and January, the moment it hits the ground, we plow it and then we take it out so that everybody can come and enjoy the downtown area and the retail shops can stay open and what have you. And that takes us, every single night we do it is about $15,000 to bring in a bunch of triaxles with all of our men and a bunch of loaders and push all the snow into one area and then shovel it all out and put it up at our transfer station where we're permitted to leave it. So at that point in time, it cost us about $15,000 a night. I added one more night back in. We had cut it back when they asked us to go from 2 to 0. That's lower than what we are normally seeing as far as our average. So I wanted to bring that back. And that was the only basically change in our budget other than things that were driven by outside situations. As far as the transfer station is at 1.7 million. It's up $60,000. We have an increase in our salary line item. If you remember, we went from basically 5 men down to 4 men, right? So we have supervisor and 3, okay? So what we're seeing now is a little bit of push and pull on the fact that we have to have a certain amount of staffing just to house, just to take care of the transfer station itself. If someone's out sick or someone's on vacation, we run into an overtime situation, right? Where we either got to pull from the parks or the highway or the sewer plant and then pay their overtime to come in because someone's out on vacation, right? Or someone's out sick. So we're seeing a little bit of a bump in that salary line item, around $10,000 or so. It still offsets the salary line that we took away, but there is that little push and pull that we're seeing going forward. We didn't necessarily see it during COVID because we were on a 2 and 2, okay? 2 were home, 2 were in because we split our staff. But now with everyone back, we're seeing that, and we're still busy there. And then we have our increase in our recycling and bulky waste. Both of those contracts are up June 30. They're 2-year contracts. They'll finish June 30. And we added in a little bit of money for each, about $20,000 in each line, just to see exactly what was going to happen going forward, knowing we're going to see an increase. We just don't know exactly what it's going to be yet. We're hoping for a favorable rate. Most of our recycling is quite clean, but we're small fish in a very big pond. All of our stuff goes to one MRF. And if that MRF is getting a lot of stuff that's not necessarily clean, it's not necessarily helping us that we're very clean in and of itself. So, the number is across the board. Any questions on transfer station or highway? Fantastic. The parks maintenance. So parks maintenance has $166,000 increase. It's up 8.6% to $2,087,000. We have an increase in one of our salary lines. Last year, the Board of Finance offered us a full-time person straight out of the box, if you remember. And I'm still getting yelled at because I didn't take the guy straight out of the box, right? So we said we'll take the guy part-time and then we'll move forward and see if we're actually saving some money. So John did an excellent analysis on where we were saving money with this gentleman on a part-time basis and where we would see that driver moving forward. And there was a definitive answer, and the answer is yes, that we're seeing it. So we now have kind of made a little bit of a change, put this man to a full-time position. Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance agreed with that. And then we have a little bit of a drop in our part-time salary line. We still would like to keep the gardener that we had last year. It's about $15,000 to have Ray come from the country club to come and help at Waveney. He did a fantastic job. There'll be more planting at Waveney as part of the Waveney Park Conservancy. He's got a couple of big projects that they want to do. They want to finish the forecourt area, and then we're looking at doing the service area and some other areas. And then they're going to be looking and doing some additional work at the Genium Meadow and down at the pond. And we're hoping that Ray is going to be able to work through there and then possibly go to other locations, and we'll see. And we might get to the point where we would want to bump up his hours if we can see that we're seeing a bump, and we're seeing necessarily that we can reduce our outside contractor line for that and have someone in-house who's very knowledgeable working. We might be able to increase that line, but that'll be for later. And then we have an increase in our outside contractor line. In our professional services line. Our professional services line is basically for Mead Park. That's to take over the tennis courts. So there's a bump in that line. What we're seeing is because of the jump in tennis, there was 144% increase in tennis over last year. So you're seeing that exact bump. And last year, what we did was we put out a bid with an incentive, right? So basically we said, we want the courts opened early. And the only way to do that was incentivize it, right? To give them a bonus if they opened it up early. It worked. We didn't necessarily have the money in our budget to do it. We found other money because we felt strongly that let's test it, and it worked very well. And it was well received across the board from the tennis community that we were actually able to open early. Sometimes we were opening in June. This time we were opening in late April, early May, right? It was almost too early at that point in time because we necessarily didn't want to get on it, with rain and things of that nature. So we did the exact same thing this year, and we've been very successful with it. And then because of that, we want to see basically a midsummer cleaning. We want to go back in and redo it again because they were getting so much wear and tear. So we have a little bit of a jump there. In our outside contractor line, we are taking over some of the role that Steve had in his budget on the recreation side and moving it over to the parks maintenance side. This specifically is for areas in and around Waveney, right? Whereby we used to hire an outside contractor for around $24,000 to do all the plantings in and around Waveney, all the work that was done there. So we're taking that over and basically moving that over from rec into parks maintenance. And then we have another line in there for snow removal of our turf fields, right? So everyone wants to get on the turf field as early as possible, and it always seems to snow late in the season, right? So at the time that they want to get on is the time that it winds up snowing. So we actually, we hire an outside contractor to come in and do a really nice job of cleaning all the snow off for us. And so you'll see a commensurate bump in there. And then the other one, a larger jump, is in our outside grass treatments, right? Last year, we were asked about pesticide treatment, and then we did an analysis of Connor Field versus Sachs Field. And we determined that Sachs was all non-pesticide, and we had to increase the amount of times that we were actually working there. So we see a bump there, but we're also seeing a problem whereby grass has gone up 40%, right? Seed's gone up 17%, and the labor associated with those two things of having somebody come in and do an outside grass treatment or a fertilizer treatment gone up 5% from last year. So if you see that, that's across the board. So that's strictly just that one line item, 40% increase in seed, 17 in fertilizer, 5% in labor, and there it is, boom. So you see that entire line item for outside grass treatments, that increase is all associated with basically the times that we're in, now. No change in service, just, change in the fact that you can't get the material, or you can get the material, you're gonna pay 40% more for the same seed that you had bought before. We did a nice job of pre-buying a lot of our stuff, but we necessarily don't have enough to take out, the entire season. You can't store it for that long. So that kind of gives you an idea across the board as to where the drivers were on the Parks Department side, and what we're seeing, in order to just stay, even. We took over the maintenance at Dunning Stadium that used to be done by the booster. We have a commensurate bump of about $7,000 to $9,000 in John's budget for that exact work, right? For us to go in and do maintenance in and around Dunning. And then you'll see that we have inside the capital line, we actually got capital numbers for Dunning Stadium as well, where normally they might have been carried someplace else. As far as the Nature Center goes, Nature Center, we provide all the utilities for them. The Nature Center does the rest of their work, and then we provide maintenance to them, snow plowing, grass cutting, things of that nature. And then some of our tree service goes through there, but they have a maintenance person that takes care of a number of the work. That number just on the utility line alone is jumping up $15,000 or 25%. But overall, we used to fund the Nature Center at somewhere around the order of $105,000 back in the fiscal 10 range. And now we're still at just under 80. So we're still well below where we were funding prior, but this is this is a jump on what we see going forward, jump in our water, electricity, and in our fuel at this point. Necessarily, we're not going to bring natural gas up to the nature center. They might, but we won't necessarily see that for another year or so. We've asked them to see if they could get up that far, but we don't know if they will at present. Right now, they're going to focus in different areas of town. And then as far as town utilities go, this is we pay for our sewer service. So every town building has to pay a sewer use fee. So we have to pay the sewer department for that. And then we pay Aquarian for hydrant service, and we pay CLMP for streetlights. We have about just over 400 streetlights in town, and then we pay a lease fee for them to provide the electricity and then provide the service to it, right? So if the light is out, I put in a service request, they come and they take care of it. Just last week, I had the police department do their semi-annual review throughout town and take a look at it. So they go through twice. So right before light changeover, as far as spring forward, fall back, or what have you. They do it during those 2 times, and they had 13 lights that were out. I asked Eversource on March 1st. I put in 13 service requests. March 7th, I got 13 emails back saying they were all taken care of. Can't necessarily complain about that. But we do pay for that service. It's about $7 a light, per month on a lease basis, electricity included. We go forward from there. And then on the hydrant side, we pay for every single hydrant that we have, and then we pay a per inch foot fee for the water main. Okay, so there's a way for them to recoup the fact that they actually have to put in the main, because normally for this building, say you might have an inch line or a 2-inch line to cover it, but the fire service line has to be an 8-inch line, and it's separate. So in order to put in that large line, in order to actually carry that volume of water, they got to put in a bigger pipe. Put in that bigger pipe, all the municipalities pay back a fee to Aquarian to pay for that. So it's called an inch per inch per foot, right? So an 8-inch diameter pipe has a certain charge for it, and the amount of linear footage that they have. And now that they put in some additional mains in town or replace those mains, that depreciation goes back up to the cost of what it was for them to put it in, and we start paying again across the board. And we added a couple of hydrants here and there. Every time we put in a water main, I asked the fire marshal and the fire chief, and they go out and they do an analysis of that area, and they decide, do we need more or not? And at that point in time, Aquarian puts those in free of charge, and then we wind up paying this fee back to them. And over time, we wind up paying off that cost. So that kind of gives you an idea. And overall, we've been trending at a 3% rate. So I kept it at a 3% rate. They tell us exactly where they think they're going to be, but then they go through PURA, okay, and actually have to get their rates approved. But the rates don't get approved until our budget cycle is done, right? So they get approved in sometime in April, May, but we're already done at that point in time. So they give us a letter telling us where they think they're going to be, and then eventually it comes out in the washes where they actually are. And we've been trending at about 3% rate. So we put it at a 3% rate. Yeah. And then on tree service, I increased that line by $90,000. And that's in essence just to take up the fact that there's increased work, right? So it's a $539,000. It's a $90,000 increase. And I increased, there are 3 lines in tree service. There's outside tree service for the highway department for all of our roads. We have 125 miles of road, 122.8 actually. So that's 250 lane miles that we're responsible for. So there's trees on 250 lane miles, right? So that he's got to take care of all of those. And then inside every single one of our parks, the tree warden is responsible for every tree and shrub in our parks and around our tree and around our buildings. And then we have a maintenance line, and that's for pruning, for tree care. If we need to try to, tree spading to try to open up the roots, if it's compacted, or try to save a specimen tree that we have, or necessary for tree planting. So in essence, I increased one line by 50,000, the highway, the parks by about 25, and then $15,000 to this tree maintenance line that can be used for tree planting if we can get there, right? We're doing about 25 takedowns every month, okay? In essence, 20, say, takedowns a month. So by 12 months, it's about 240 takedowns, and we're not putting necessarily the trees back. Are we getting some undergrowth? Yeah, but we're not necessarily putting trees back ourselves. The only way right now we're putting back trees are because of the Beautification League, the Garden Club, other service organizations, or people donating trees. And then we come in and we plant them for them, right? But in essence, we're not necessarily doing tree planting ourselves. The sustainable CT, Robin got us a grant last year. And we were able to put 15 trees at Waveney. It was fantastic. The biggest planting that we had done in Waveney in a while. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. Every year in the May, June timeframe, I'm putting the brakes on the tree warden because we don't have any money left in his budget. And he's taking down trees that are dangerous, right? I don't want to have to put a brake on him. So that's why I increased the budget, is because every May and June, I have to say, Bob, whoa, right now. He's only got like $9,000 or $10,000 left in his budget, and we are in March. Wow. Okay, so there are some things that that's the whole reason for the change.
Tom, could you just remind me, I don't remember which trees we're talking about. Is this every tree in the town easement alongside of the road, or?
Yeah, in the town right away, in town-owned roads, town right away, we're responsible for, right? So
Okay.
it's about the right of way on average is 50 feet, right? Just say
Yeah.
standard, right? So it's 50 feet. If the road is 25 feet wide, okay, you got 25 feet outside of that. So in essence, you're looking at 12 on either side. So the first 12 feet on either side necessarily is town property, and we're responsible for those trees.
And does Eversource trim those same trees?
Eversource does, they do a very nice job. They have been working diligently on their tree trimming process, over a number of years. There'll be a communication going out probably next Monday about what they're planning to do this year. And there's a scorecard associated with how well they've been doing. And they're no slouch. They've been working. And if we see a tree that is dangerous, that is near the wires, we contact our tree warden, contacts Eversource, and they'll come take it down. We can't take down anything in and around that envelope, right? It's Eversource's responsibility. If it's on a state road, we contact the state. But if it's on the opposite side of the street, it's ours, right? Even if it's dead, think it's going to fall on the wires. No, it's our responsibility, right? So if it's diseased and it's on this side, it's ours. So you could say it's 125 lane miles because it's only half, but necessarily, there's trees underneath the wires that are ours as well. To give you an idea. Good on that. All right. And then, so town hall annex, easy. It's at 0. Okay, because we were tracking it for a number of years just because we had bought it and we wanted to see exactly what it was. It's costing us around $40,000 a year to run, but we're getting an offset from revenue. And we rolled that $40,000 into the building department. So that's one of the reasons why the building department increased as well, because I took this $40,000 and put it in there. There's no reason to have separate accounting for the town hall annex when we don't have separate accounting for our other town buildings. And then if we get to our wastewater plant, we're at 1.368 million. It's up $49,000 or 3.73%. And grit removal, I think it stands, that's pretty much, it's you understand what that is. And sludge removal, exact same thing. We are within our contracts right now, and we see a commensurate bump in our contract, right? So it's a 5-year contract, 3-year contract, and there's an increase for every year. So that's what you're seeing as the driver on these two items, as far as our treatment plant. But our treatment plant is right now wholly funded through sewer use tax or sewer use fee. And we don't see a very large increase coming forward to the people, the users of the system itself. Any question on operating?
Just one
Sure.
question. Is the wastewater treatment plant also processing storm water?
That's a great question. So at times, yes. So what we're doing right now is we have an I&I study out. It's an inflow and infiltration study. Okay. It's costing us about $200,000 to look at our entire sewage system, our sewer system, and see where exactly we're getting infiltration and inflow. Inflow is basically your sump pump is connected to maybe your washer discharge in your basement, right? So you took your sump pump hose and you put it into your washer discharge, and it goes through your washer. Well, your washer winds up at the treatment plant, right? Because obviously it's if you had something that when you were cleaning your laundry, that needs to be treated, right? Well, you put that water in, your sump pump kicks on, that clean water goes through and into our system, right? Infiltration is just whether or not the pipes themselves, the joints have openings in them, whether some of our system is from the 1900s, 1930s. We just lined Main Street from Locust to East Avenue with an in situ form to put that in. That was the line was in 1908, I believe it was. We saved a ton of money for the depth that it was. It's about 13 feet deep. If we had to open up that entire road to do that work, it would have been astronomical, but we could in situ form it and line the entire process for pennies, looking at that cost. So we are looking at that. We do a third of our system a year. We TV and clean. So we get through our system every 3 years. So to speak, and now the look is to go through and see, put flow meters out throughout town, and then through the wet season, March and April, right? And see in the dry, how many millions of gallons was coming through, and in the wet, how many millions of gallons are now coming through, and then try to pinpoint areas of concern, and then go back and try to attack it, either through public education and outreach to the resident to say, hey, can you please put your septic, your sump pump into your detention system or overland or into our drainage system so we can take it in that regard, and don't put it into your, into your washer discharge, or areas where we're seeing infiltration. We've either got to spend some money to line some pipes or reline some manholes, to basically parge up the manholes. Back when we built the treatment plant, part of that project was to do that was part of my project, was about 100 manholes we did in town. And then we did 3 separate sewer lines that we relayed that were problem areas, Gower, Kimberly, and 1 through Mead Park. So we did those. And but since that time, we haven't taken a holistic look at our system. And this is allowing us to take a holistic look at our system, because during a storm, yeah, we purr along at a good rate, at a good number, 1 million gallons a day. And during a storm, we'll spike up to 7 million gallons. And that's 7 million gallons. That difference is not everybody's flushing their toilet during that time. That's basically stormwater coming in. So that's the reason for this study, and that's the reason why we'll go forward. And at that point in time, we're hoping to find out where our biggest issues are and attack those biggest issues, so then we can take care of that capacity problem.
Is that in this budget?
It was in a previous budget, and in October, the Board of Selectmen approved it, and the flow meters went out today, as a matter of fact. So they're putting them out now, and they'll be out there for a while to take a look. And especially we want to hit it during some storm events. And and at that point in time, once our consultant determines that he's gotten enough data from it, then they'll bring it in, they'll start to analyze that data, and then be able to tell us where we need to pinpoint. So it's basically a year-long process. We're halfway through, so to speak.
Thank you.
Tom.
In that example, the 7 million spike, how close does that get us to maximum capacity?
It's right here. So we're very close. At
Yeah.
that point in time. To Jimmy's credit, in 40 years, or I've been here 20 years, I asked him during Ida, how are we doing? It was the first time he said, it's going to be close. So it was close during Ida. We got 4.5 inches in an hour and a half. Okay. So that was a lot of water coming in for a very short period of time. We have processes in place. Jimmy's got an excellent process in place to try to navigate through that, as far as diverting flows and using excess capacity that we have, or areas. We have an extra carousel. We have areas that we can actually store some of it. But eventually, if it's too much water, we won't be able to. And at that point in time, we'll have to decide whether it flows over the top and into our property, or we actually have to open up the valve and let it go out. And that's would be the last worst case scenario. To date, we haven't had that problem, and we've been able to make permit through every single storm. But the last storm definitely gave us some concern, and the storms are just getting that much more intense and a little bit worse. Over for the past, 15 or so years, we weren't having that problem. We were getting water, but it was slower, right? And we were able to battle it a little bit better. Now we're seeing where it's a cause for concern. It's the reason why we push forward with the INI study, and we're hoping that that's going to give us some methods and some means to tackle some of it. Find out where we're getting the most problem, right? And my thought is that the most problem is in the sump pump issue, right? The people don't necessarily know where to put it. So if we get some public education and outreach out there to tell them exactly where they should, go out and try to help them, hopefully we'll get compliance. I don't want to get into a situation where I've got to go into everyone's basement and take a look. It's not necessarily a fun part of the job.
Thank you.
Darien did the same thing, and Darien has the same problem. So
Thank you. All right, ready for capital? All right.
All right.
The fun part.
The fun part. So our capital request this year is $12.5 million. It's up $3 million from last year's $9.3 million request or receipt. This does not include the $17.5 million from the police department, right? Because that just kind of skews the process, right? We didn't include the town hall when we did the town hall. We don't include certain things. For a number of years, we weren't even including our bridges, right? If we had a $2 million bridge, we didn't include it. Now we are starting to, because they're one-offs, but in essence, we took that out because you necessarily can't look at that spike. It's a one-time spike. So I'll run through everything for you now. So we'll get into administration engineering. We're 3.7 million down from 5.7 million last year. That's the $2 million for the one bridge that we had in the budget last year, the Ponus Ridge Bridge at Collins Pond, right? We have our pavement management program. And since Steve, if you'll indulge me, right? Because you've listened to this, I did this out. I think I've given this presentation over 30 times. Okay. And I think that you've listened to at least 20 of them, because some of them had to go to the Board of Finance and the Town Council, but because there's people here who haven't seen it, I'll give you what we do for our roads, right? As far as what the Highway Department, Mose and I have been doing for the past, since 2004, right? Is when we brought this into play. It was our pavement management program. So we have a pavement preservation or pavement management program. And what we're looking to do on it is basically it's a planned system, right? Every year we try to do something to the roads, or every couple of years we try to do something to the road to keep and maintain that asset. So in order to maintain that asset, what we're looking to do is we want to extend the pavement life. We want to lower our annual costs and necessarily want to improve our overall network, right? So we want to improve the rideability, or, basically that's our grade, right? How are we doing, right? And in essence, it's very proactive approach. It's not reactive. In the past, paving was always reactive. When the road fell apart, you paved it. It's not necessarily that case now. What you're trying to do is you're trying to stop it from falling apart. You're trying to do things to it in order to prolong its life and keep its rideability at a high level, right? So that the phone doesn't ring and people are satisfied, and it actually reduces our cost, right? So it's basically keeping the good roads in good condition, right? So, the benefits are threefold. They're financial, environmental, and user satisfaction, right? So the financial one is basically, if we do this, we extend our pavement life at a lower cost. Okay, so every single thing that we're trying to do is a lower cost ratio as far as waiting for it to fall apart and repave it. And the environmental aspects are the exact same. We reduce the amount of natural resources that we have in our energy consumption. And like I talked about, our user satisfaction increases because we're improving our rideability. It's the one call that we get, right? I drive over that trench every single day. You got to do something about that trench. Or I've got a pothole, or I've got this, or I got that, or the road is starting to ravel, where the top of the road is starting to fall apart and you can see it's all rough. So when you're driving over it, even if you have a really, really nice car and it's plush, you'll feel that and you'll hear it, right? That's exactly the user satisfaction. And that's tiring for most people,
So one of the most eye-opening things that has happened to me since I've been serving is we sent out a survey. It was years ago, probably 10 more years ago, asking residents to rank the most important things to them. And obviously, number one, education. Number two, health and safety. Number three was roads. It blew me away. I mean, there was like 20 things that, you could check off, and roads ranked as like the third thing that people cared about. I never would have thought that was the case, but
I was happy to hear it, but I didn't think it was going to be there either, to be perfectly honest with you. So this used to be the original pavement deterioration curve, right? It started off in an excellent condition. You paved it 20 years later, it was in a poor condition. And then you would go and you would redo the whole thing, a full reconstruction, repave it again, right? So that was the overall driving thought. The driving thought now, and the thought that we've been doing for the past 15 years, is the fact that you do something intermittently. So after 5 years, you're seeing your pavement starting to crack. A crack is the worst thing that can happen to your pavement, because now you're adding in water into the base. Once you get water to the base, you get a freeze thaw action, and that's what causes the pothole, right? It's actually the action from down below, not from up above. So the first thing that you can do with the first dime you spend on your road is actually on the crack seal, right? So if you've only got $100,000 to spend on your roads, you crack seal. You don't do anything else, because you stop the water from getting in, and then you can prolong your life. So then after about 10 years, you're going to see the surface is going to start to go a little bit, right? Your riding surface is going to start to go a little bit. That's when you put in a secondary treatment, like a micro thin overlay, or we've been doing another thing, which is a cape seal, which is basically a chip seal with a micro thin overlay over the top of it. And that in essence gives you your wearing course back again, stops your UV degradation. Your sun's going to kill your pavements, right? It's drying your pavement out, right? It actually rejuvenates the pavement and actually gives you another 10 years of life user wise, right? And then at that point in time, after that 20 years, you might be able to do another thin overlay over the top of it and buy yourself another 7 to 10 years at that point in time. Or in certain situations, if the ADT, the average daily traffic, is high, you've got to come in and you got to mill and pave it. All right. So if you take those 3 treatments across the board, you look at that first treatment costs us about $1, okay? Maybe $1 square yard, maybe a little bit more now, right? I think we're at like $1.17 or something. The next one is about $9. We'll probably be at $10 this year to put a micro thin overlay on it. And then when we get into the mill and pave, it's at $20. Right now, our rate, right now, we were at $22 a square yard. Last year, we'll probably be at about 25 based upon my estimate this year. Hopefully we'll be at 25. If I take those three together, it's $30, right? For a square yard for that entire pavement. And I got her through a useful life and onward. Okay, meaning that I'm going to buy another 20 years out of it versus if I just pave it after its useful life is gone, I pay $60 or more. We're actually paying $66 a square yard. If I let that thing die in the end, it's going to cost me about $65 to $66 a square yard to do it. So half of the cost if we actually maintain it as we go, right? Versus letting it die and go. But the bigger part is the fact that the road stays in a very good condition the entire time if you treat it as you go, right? If you don't, the majority of the time it's actually spent less than good, right? Good or under, all the way down to poor. Okay. So when we first started the program, we had to take a lot of our roads and pick them up, okay, and get them up. And now we've got it to the point where we have almost every single road in play. Okay. We have about 12 roads left that haven't been touched in a 20-year time frame, and they'll be touched this year and next year. And the reason that they haven't been is either they're in play for other things, water line, a gas line, something else that's going on, or we're just right at that point in time, right? Most of them are the fact that they got delayed. Little Brook can't be paved because they're going to put a 36-inch water transmission line in there next year. They're going to tear apart the entire road. No sense in paving it. And they've been putting it on the books for the past 3 years. It's the reason why we haven't done anything with Little Brook. It's right in front of East School. I would love to do it. But the fact of the matter is we'd be wasting money. We'd be spending good money after bad. So the thought is that, at that point in time, we had a 20-year span, right? 2004 to 2024. We're actually ahead of the game. And if I had gotten rid of Eversource a little bit earlier, or Eversource didn't come in, we were going to be done in the 17-18 year range and then work our way back through the process, and actually might even save a little bit of money in the middle because we wouldn't necessarily have to treat everything at that point, and we would have been done. And at that point in time, we have every single road in play, if you follow me, right? So that's been our goal. That's been our process. As I mentioned, we have 122.8 miles of road, right? Our replacement cost for just the pavement alone in 2004, the 2004 cost was $48 million. Okay. At present, we were getting $2.5 million per year for 20 years, right? We haven't even gotten to that point. That's 50 million, but I haven't even gotten to that point. I'm at the 18-year mark. I'm $5 million less than that. I'm at 45 million, and I'm almost done with every single road, and every single road is in perfect condition or near perfect condition at that point in time. So not only did we save money, but we did it faster, in essence, from what is being shown. To give you an idea of where we are, this is our pavement condition index. It's a rating from 0 to 100, okay? And where we stood. We started at a 77, and in the first couple of years, we had this very large lift because when we started in 2004, we hadn't done our roads since 1984, okay? So we hadn't done a road in 20 years. They had paved a lot in 1984. They had spent $7 million at that point in time. And they said, they're perfect. We're not going to touch them. Well, after 20 years, every single one was done at that point, past its useful life. So all these ones that you see in the beginning, those were all the reclaim ones that the roads were done. We actually had to repave everything, rebuild the entire process, and actually install drainage. So inside these numbers aren't even included all the drainage work that we had done along with it to then prolong the life of our road. And we're basically at this point in time, in 2022, 2023, we're going to pass our number that we had. 85 was our number where we say, okay, we're a solid B, right? And then, we consider that a job well done at that point in time. We might be able to take our foot off the big gas a little bit and then go forward. We don't know, but at that point in time, we've been at $2.5 million for 20 years. We haven't asked for an increase. At some point in time, inflation is going to come into play, right? Because we've been adding processes and adding things to our quiver of what we can do. Crack seal, micro thin overlay, fog seal, cape seal, high out in place asphalt recycling, those kind of things. Well, we're going to be at a point where we're going to run out of things that we can do, and just numbers will drive us past. So I'll skip through this. This is basically to tell you what, an excellent condition road looks like. A routine maintenance, that's crack sealing. This would be an overlay, preventive maintenance, where we get into a mill and pave, and then a base rehab. We have no roads that look like this. That's basically tearing it all out, putting it back together again. But to give you an idea, this is basically where we were at in 2019. We had a firm come in, take a look at our entire road network again. We had somebody come in 2004 and tell us where we were. They told us our PCI was 77.08 at that point. We had somebody come in and drive every single one of our roads in 2019. This is after Eversource did 2018 and 2019. All of the roads that they affected in 2018 and 2019, 15 miles of road. This is what they came forward with at that point in time. And at that point in time, they rated us at an 86. I had us at an 83. Okay. But they said an 86, and they actually asked, why are we doing this? Because you are perfect. We shouldn't necessarily be here, because we should go to towns that actually need the work. Right. But we needed a snapshot in town to prove that what we had done for 20 years actually worked. And if you take a look here at all the roads that are poor, right? I know, Rita, I know you're looking right at Fieldcrest and Village, right? So it's
I have a
okay.
comment.
It's that little orange, Poseidon Fork right there.
Yeah.
That's now green, right? Because it was paved. Old Studio Road, that was paved. The number of ones, every single River Street, all right, is that other green or the orange in the middle, that was paved. Everything that's orange has been repaved. Most of the yellows have been repaved. So everything for us is turning back over again. And after this year, all the light green ones that are in the center of town there will be taken from that light green, where we're at a, say, a good, fair rating because of Eversource, will then be repaved and we'll be back to an excellent. So that's why we're seeing that bump where we are. We had to go through that pain of Eversource, but at that same time, we worked on every other road to then come back to the middle. So it kind of gives you an idea of exactly where we are. And, it shows that, well, everyone might be upset about the 15 miles of road in the town that they drive on every day, where they're upset about that. To get here, they had to drive on a great road, right? So out of the 122 miles of road we have, we got about 15 of them, 12 to 15 of them that aren't in great shape. But I got 100 miles that are great, that nobody gives credit for, because your end of your drive into town is on a bad road, and the first part of your drive out of town is on a bad road. You don't count the one when you're on your cul-de-sac getting home. It's just when I came to town hall, it stunk, and when I left town hall, it stunk. But the whole ride in between was excellent. Yeah.
Not me.
Oh.
I drove on a bad road the whole way here.
That's right. Well, because you're in town, right? So,
And I'm looking, I just want to be clear. When you presented this at the liaison meeting, I just want to clarify. So essentially all those roads that Eversource touched from farm into town, that's this year.
Close. Yeah. So it'll be from farm to Oak was the 2018 year. Okay.
Yeah.
Both sides of the street, both sides of South Avenue, down to Main, down to Park Street, both sides from farm to Oak.
Got it.
All right. Bank Street at that point in time. And then next year will be Bank into town, right? Because you had to give them the extra year. We lost the year to COVID. I had to give them an extra year for COVID. So that kind of give you an idea. So yeah. So that whole area where you are in the middle there, all that light green, Crystal Grace, with Douglas Faraday, all that work there. Yes.
Those are my people, so I have to.
That's
I have to go back.
You have to represent. You can tell them that you pounded your fist on the table. You're able to get it.
Literally, a resident said that to
Well,
me on my way here. He's like, that's what I've got to go to a town council. He's like, what are you doing about these roads? I've got my answer.
You've got your answer.
We talked a few months ago about Lower Main Street and how it was one of the worst roads in town after they had finished with it. And now, you drive on it and you forget about it.
Back to where it was. Yeah. From 2012. That was the baby, right?
Yeah.
So that I didn't like to see that one go, but now we got a little bit left from Lakeview onward,
right?
But that'll be this year and next year, and then there are some roads that are still in play that I can't necessarily touch. This transmission line is going to come through Harrison Avenue. I can't touch, right? Can't touch Lakeview. Can't touch Littlebrook. Can't touch certain areas. It is what it is.
What's the best way for a resident to raise their hand and get to you as far as
call?
Just call. Okay. Because
call.
we
That's all you
hear
gotta
that
do.
all the time. How do I make the town aware of my road or whatever? So
They're not shy.
Okay, good.
But have them call. We know exactly when a road gets below like a 75. We know exactly when we start tripping a 77 kind of deal.
Yeah.
We know exactly when we hit that number.
Okay.
And that's like the lower end before we start to put before we put a mic with an overlay on. It was about a 78 PCI. That's when we start getting a call. And pretty much that year, we're actually going to go out and put a thin overlay on top of it.
Rita.
So like this is an area of expertise that I have after having this
Right.
experience. I am not surprised at all that it's a top 5 concern for residents, because you're on it every day, your kids play it on every day. And and Tiger did an amazing job coming in and expediting, fixing up Fieldcrest and Village. I mean, it's amazing. And you were very easy to work with, and the town was really easy to work with. So I not only do I endorse this plan completely, I think it makes a lot of sense, for a lot of reasons. One, to maintain people's satisfaction with the town, and to keep the roads, economically, it makes sense. And I think you guys do a phenomenal job. So I completely think this is worth the time and effort.
It made Fieldcrest one of the go-to places for
Yep.
people to.
It brought it back to being a great neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, it was a great
It's
neighborhood
always a
before.
great
it was
neighborhood, but now the town comes to skateboard, the
That's the thing.
egress that come down, now the amount of kids, I mean, we already had very kid-heavy street. Now it's like, okay, this is the cool place
Yeah.
to be.
Well, not, and I've said the difference was no one was going on the street. Like kids couldn't play without you were worried or they were going to get hurt. It was that bad. Like, on going out down with your bike and flipping over, or there were so many worries. And now you walk down like our streets every single day, your kids are playing on it. And that's the way it should be. You should walk outside and see your kids, enjoying the
Neighborhood
area.
again.
Mhm.
It's
So
great.
thank you.
I think there's always a hockey game in front of your
There-
house, right? Rita?
Absolutely. And I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
So Tiger, just a quick question. When I look at the map, is it the light green? I know that the orange are the worst and the yellow, but are the light greens the ones that you're going to be doing this year?
Well, not all of them, but yeah, the majority of them. So you're looking at where you get down into the light green, you're into that good range, right? So it's either an 85 on downward, and that's where we're starting to look at, we'll probably be coming in for a microthin overlay at that point in time, or a Cape Seal. So some of them might be at 85, get nothing. After it's about a 2.5% reduction in depreciation every year, right? So it's just take the 85, 2 years later, 3 years later, I'm going to be doing something on that road. So yeah, it's a little bit harder to say all these because most of these are in between 80 and 85.
Okay.
But yeah, if I can move forward, so we have, next is I've got $75,000 in for our bridges. Okay, so we have a number of bridges that are under 20 feet. All of our bridges over 20 feet have basically been taken care of. In 2010, we had this listing of all of our bridges as far as where they stood. There were 27 of them, and half of them were in the red and yellow. It's necessarily a sign of where we should be, where we shouldn't be. Now in 2021, I've got 2 left to do, and that's Bonus Ridge, Collins Pond, and Nursery Road. And Nursery Road, in essence, is at a 96% capacity rating for it, and it shouldn't necessarily be changed. So we are on, as far as what we've done for our bridges, now we're looking at every bridge under 20 feet, right? So I've got a 3-year plan to take care of our under 20-foot structures, come in first with an engineering plan, and then 2 years after that to try to come in and rehab them for whatever they are. They might be a culvert, they might be something else. So I've got $75,000 in the budget for that. I've got $300,000 in parking lots. We have 62 municipal lots in town, believe it or not. So 62. All right, so yeah, every yellow dot is a lot. Now, granted, you look at Waveney, you've got a ton of them, right? But they're all separate at that point in time, and they all have separate treatments going on. But that's the reason for the 300 grand, is so we've got to keep going forward. Everyone thinks about just the ones that they park in commuter wise. It's not necessarily that. Every single building's got a parking lot associated with it. So if you think about every single building's got a parking lot, you get to the point where I'm at 62, right? So I have $300,000 in for parking lots. I've got monies in $300,000 in for our sidewalks. When they came in to do our paving, they came in and did our sidewalks at the exact same time and gave us a look. Our sidewalks were our next focus. Our sidewalk condition index right now, our average was about a 61. So in 2019, you're looking at some of the critical areas that we had. A lot of these have already been changed over. Fieldcrest and Village obviously now should be a bold green, right? It should be in excellent condition because we took care of it. And then other areas, the Brinkerhoff Mortimer area, that little triangular piece in the middle, that was done last year. So we've done areas since 2019, 2 years or 3 years worth of work that aren't reflected here, but at least it gives us a roadmap of where we should be going forward. So that $300,000 that we have for sidewalk improvement, you'll see the areas of focus just by looking on the map. We're trying to go up Owen Ridge past the nature center. That's that red line leading out of town, right? And then after that, we'll look at Heritage Hill, because Heritage Hill is another area. This, right now we have out to bid, we have Farm Road from Main Street to South Avenue, and you can see it's orange and red. So we're trying to hit that area as well, because it's a critical area. And then if we look at where we are as far as planning new ones, all these red lines were from our POCD, our Plan of Conservation Development 2014, tells you exactly where we should go. And we put in sidewalks predominantly throughout, or we have them planned already. So we've got it planned on Bank Street, 106, all the way around the corner, down to Gower. We have that one in the design phase right now. We have the fact that we're looking at this stretch here, so we're looking at this is Richmond Hill. We got this area that's down from here on Elm Street up to Irwin. We did the trail through, and now we're looking at trying to get Owen Ridge done. Things of that nature. We've tried to attack every single one. We have Lakeview Avenue under design. Millport will be done this year. This is Harrison Avenue here. We have to wait on Harrison because I got a little bit of work to do as far as other. Then down on Old Norwalk Road to Kiwanis, we've already done that road. We've already done that stretch. So we're trying to stick with what any new installation fits with our POCD or Plan of Conservation Development, or areas where they say that there's concerns. So we've actually attacked probably 75% of the areas on this map. And hopefully by the time the next POCD rolls through, we'll be at a saturation rate where we shouldn't go any further. And to kind of give you an idea, we have our other kind of small numbers in there. Guidewire replacement, signage replacement, cameras and security upgrades. That's an annual that we've been going forward with, our energy savings plan. And then I have vehicles in there for our land use. I've got $85,000 in for 2 EV vehicles and a charger. Right. So Jen touched on her car itself. If you look, she told you she got a 2004 Crown Vic. It's got 111,000 miles on it. So these are the 7 land use vehicles that we have at present and their ages. They are all old police vehicles that were taken out of service on the police department. And then they're sitting here and they're basically rotting and dying. And we haven't been able to bring any new ones on board because we went through the fact that we had Dodge Chargers that we bought, and the Chargers, when they were done, had to go. At that point in time, they were so bad at that point in time, we couldn't bring them into the fleet, and the Crown Vics had to stay. So we're at the point now where if you look, our youngest vehicle is 13 years old, 12 years old, Chevy Traverse. And it's got 115,000 miles on it. And our assessor drives it, right? So the thought is to bring in 2. Jen's got 1 in her budget, and I want to see if I can't roll over the entire fleet in a 2-year process, meaning come back in again and get 2 more next year, and then necessarily drop from 7 down to 6 and have all new vehicles that we can run through. I'd like to see them be electric. We put in a congestion mitigation and air quality grant. Maria did. She did an excellent job on the grant. There was absolutely no reason why the state wouldn't say yes, because we went from vehicles like this that are basically gas guzzlers that are older, and we're going to replace them with electric vehicles. And somewhere in the state's decision making, they said it doesn't fit with air qualities, improvement of air quality. Have no idea how that actually went. We partnered with 2 other towns. It was a large grant and we lost, which still kind of staggers the mind, right? So we basically took half of what we were planning. We were looking for 4 vehicles and 2 chargers. We said we'll take 2 vehicles this year, 1 charger, and Jen has the 3rd. And we'll roll 3 over, and then we'll roll 3 more next year, and then get rid of these, because these are basically, as Jen mentioned, they're in the shop more, which is causing a headache for our fleet, for Mo's and our mechanics. We have 218 some odd rolling stock, right, that they have to maintain. We can't necessarily have all these vehicles running in and out, and then having our staff driving their own vehicles and then getting into an accident and having problems. We've also had staff drive their own vehicle and get damaged because they drive onto a construction site and the rebar goes through their tire, and the town says, we're not going to pay for that tire. And they wound up having to replace all 4. That's a lot of money just trying to do your job, right? That you ran over a piece of rebar at a construction site. So we'd rather have our vehicles drive onto those sites and have a problem than, it's underneath our insurance umbrella, our situation. Last thing we want is a town employee driving their vehicle, get into an accident, and the town's on the hook,
Tom.
But until we get the optimal number of vehicles to solve all these issues, what do we do about Jen?
She's got it in her budget. So it's basically, we're working.
She was
towards,
driving her personal car, right?
She's driving her Brian Platts is driving his personal car. So it's a choice at present, and we try to keep these up and running, and the majority of them can be shared, but it at the point we're at the point now where we probably should have replaced them a couple of years ago. But at that time we were being asked to keep everything flat. But I'm at the point now where I can't. I got to come forward and say, I got to do this, and because the grant fell through, now we're at this situation. So
Why are we not reimbursing for mileage?
you have to submit for it.
Okay, I thought Jen said that she wasn't.
She might not be submitting for it, but there is a reimbursement process, and the mileage is reimbursed at the IRS rate. So you have to, it's difficult because they have to track their mileage wherever they go, right? So it's
Right.
actually kind of onerous as far as to try to track where you went to then prove that you drove those miles and why you drove those miles.
Okay.
And then in the end, it really comes down to time, in essence, for the amount that you're getting back for the mileage, it's not necessarily worth the time to actually go forward and put in the reimbursement request. If you can imagine, right?
Well, like $5-7 a gallon, it might be.
It might be, but the problem that we're having is that the drive is not necessarily that long.
I
It's
know.
that, so our mileage doesn't go up that high because it's really, they go for an inspection. You might be at that inspection for an hour, right? But you drove a mile and a half to get there. So the car was used for an hour, hour and a half, but you drove 3 miles, right? So it's not really, it's hard to track it on a mileage basis. It's easier to track it on an hours basis, right? But they're being utilized. They'll go from place to place to place. But when they come back, the car only drove 5 miles, but they were out for 4 hours, right?
What was it, 55 cents a mile?
I don't know what it is right now. It's somewhere around that range, 52 and a half, 55. So is it worth the $2.50 at that point in time? Probably not for the time frame because our employees are busy, right?
So the answer is we need enough cars.
Right. So we're trying to get to that point. So that's why we're trying to turn over half the fleet this year and half the fleet next. And to be honest, 2 of these cars that are in here, the building department's saying that they can drop down to 1 and 2 of them are in good shape. So if I get rid of 3, I've got 2 that are in good shape and I got another one that maybe, I start sharing others, right? So we're looking at trying to put in a fleet utilization software. Stanford did it. They had 150 cars. They dropped down to 98 cars and they increased their ridership from 50% to 100% or around 90%, right? So the utilization of the car changed just by using a software system where you sign the car out, right? So we're trying to get to that process too, because right now it's just basically 1 car per department. If the department doesn't go out, the car sits there, right? That's lot rot. That's what our mechanics call it, and it's bad for the car.
Steve?
Rita.
So I understand, I mean, I have my own business, so I do the mileage and I track it, but it's different because it's not like a mile or 2. But my husband works for a different company and they give him a car allowance. So they say it's this much, you use your own car, but we pay X. Is that an option? And like instead of doing a mileage based?
Well, we can certainly talk to the finance
just
department, but at present, it was,
something to think about.
it's easier, tax wise to be actually able to then track that, from a tax basis, it's a one-off, right? It's not considered income. I don't know if a car utilization,
I think there's a formula they use, companies will use to.
I don't know if
And
it's
I don't, again,
taxable or not.
I'm just trying to brainstorm different ideas.
Well, the thought process is that if we can, move these forward, we'll be in a month or 2. If I can get a Chevy Volt fast,
I got a car guy for you.
And then the bottom line is,
I know
you were
it's
asking Jen to jump in a 2004. It's 18 years old. I mean,
Right.
and every
It's all of
senior,
them.
every
Well,
senior, every
it's across
senior
the
at the high
board.
school was a baby when that car was born. I mean, it's unbelievable.
No, it's across the board. So, but the problem has been that we just can't necessarily, at its inception, it was great. Its conception was the fact that we would roll over the police
Right.
vehicles, right? Well, the police vehicles now are rolling from a duty vehicle to an investigation vehicle down to another vehicle and then out back door. By the time it comes to us, it's pretty much done. You talked last night to Leon about, it's their office, right? So that car is, and they take it off the line, off the, the primary line, it's already done at that point in time. That's 60,000 miles or 85,000 miles that Leon's got on it. That guy's been sitting in it for, 24 hours a day for the 3 years or so, or 4 years that it's in there, right? So that's been from an inception point, the thought was that we were going to be able to roll through. We haven't been able to roll through. So now we're at the point now we've got to do something different. And the thought is let's clear them out, start over again, try to utilize them a little bit better, and then work towards just having replacements of these vehicles going forward and not trying to replace out of the existing fleet. So when they get down to the point like our vehicles, when we come to replace them, same exact thing, right? Just replace them as is at that point. Yeah.
All right.
All right. So let me roll to town buildings. there. They're actually on some support columns that we have to take care of. Excuse me, we have $100,000 to continue our oil to gas conversions. I don't know if you have any questions on smaller items or not, or we can kind of roll.
Waveney House ADA, what
Sure.
does that include?
That's
Just the
the
bathrooms? What about the elevator?
The elevators in a subsequent year. It's at 1.76 million at present. We're hoping that that number will come down. When we were talking to the contractor, we're thinking we might be able to get as low as 1.4. But this 990 is the fact that it's the bid number added in a year and a half, because it's been a year and a half since we bid that number. You know, problems with material procurement, and added in the contingency on top of it. So there's a 15% contingency on top of this number. So it's in essence the number that was bid at the time, which was very competitive, and then a commensurate bump because it's been a year and a half, you know, in essence, because we went from a 1 phase, 3 parcels to a 3 phase, so a 3-year process, right? So we took care of the access to the building, in and out of the building on the first floor with the work at the loge and the ramp, and the access from the second floor, the fire escape. And now we're working on, let's get the bathrooms done. The thought process might be that we combine them together and do it all in one shot. That's what people were asking, but at present, we only had, you know, a 2-phase approach in the budget, so we kept it. It was approved by the Board of Finance. You heard the presentation from the Brandon company from Waveney. I think it's a strong, you know, situation, or a strong way to go. John's done some bump in the fees for Waveney House itself. It'll never pay for itself, but I don't think it should. At present, it's a gem, and we should treat it as such. We shouldn't necessarily look to try to have it pay for itself. It's not necessarily the nature of that building shouldn't necessarily have to pay for itself, but we have to take care of it. And, you know, the ADA law went into effect in 1991. You know, it's 31 years. I mean, it's time. There's not much else I can say to that.
Tom. So real quick, I take it Powerhouse is not in here because it's tabled.
So thank you. Yeah, so the Powerhouse, there were 2 items that were taken off by the Board of Finance. $250,000 that was a bonded item, okay, to help with their lobby expansion. And then there was a $250,000 ARPA to help with their lobby expansion.
I
And
wish
then we
those
had,
numbers were slightly different.
and then we had.
Yeah, I know, easier to
I
remember.
wish those numbers were just slightly different, because
It
that
would be
that
great,
caused a
wouldn't
lot
it?
of
Because it's so hard, because then there's
No, there was a third number.
$250,000
There's 3 of them.
the bathrooms, right? Whether they're at the potting shed or at an annex facility. That has yet to be determined, right? So the Board of Finance didn't close the door, but basically said they need more information. So they're trying to drive the fact of get a combined town council, Board of Finance meeting together with the Powerhouse, so we can work through all of the questions that are there, right? Because there's a lot of questions as to what's happening and why, and where are we going, and why is it always 250, and how much is the town paying versus how much is the Powerhouse paying? And I think we all need to get in a room and basically settle it, right? Because in essence, I can't move forward on outdoor bathrooms because I don't have an answer as to what building I'm going into, because we haven't answered the problem about what the Powerhouse is doing yet, you know?
We're not sure about indoors either.
I can't go forward with the indoor ones either because, right, because
So as Tiger said, the answer is we're going to get together with the Board of Finance. We're going to have a full-blown presentation with Powerhouse. They'll come.
Right,
and
that's
present
the whole
present
council?
The entire project from start to finish.
The whole council,
Yeah,
okay.
Council and Board of Finance will have a joint meeting.
So that's going to be a separate vote?
right.
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be a separate discussion because it was in essence taken out of the budget. So if you look at the town buildings budget, the $250,000 for them has been removed, and the $200,000 for the Audubon House. Now, the Audubon House, I went back and spoke to the Nature Center, and they'd like to come forward again and have a relook at that, and possibly bring forward a public-private partnership with that, whereby they put in a little bit of the capital money associated with trying to bring this building back online, and then recoup some of those costs with some of the revenue that they would see coming forward, you know, since they'll be able to utilize the building. I hate to see the building go away. It's a nice building. It's still in decent enough shape for us to save it, right? So I'd like to save it. So we're going to do our best to try to prolong its life right now while we're discussing it. And at that point in time, you know, if it's determined, yes, you want to go forward with it, then we'll go forward with it. If not, then we'll figure out what we're going to do. But the Board of Finance had the exact same thing. They wanted some additional information for it. And so I think we got to get in a room for that one as well. I think 2 separate meetings would be better instead of 1, but we can necessarily talk about that.
Mark, sorry, Mark.
Just as it relates to the power, if we did nothing because we didn't want to do anything, Where does that, what's your opinion on that?
I'm at a stasis point with that, right? So I need an answer on what I'm going to do with the bathrooms, both of them, the indoor and the outdoor, right? So the indoor bathrooms, where we were going to put them due to the expansion, because we needed an upgrade to an ADA problem, right? An issue. It was going to take away another portion of their lobby and then their office space, right? And we're going to have to put them upstairs in an office space. And if you've ever been there and tried to walk upstairs to where they were going to go, it's not necessarily a viable option, right? They were willing to go with it, but it's not necessarily a viable option. So the problem is that we have to do something, right? I've got to make the building compliant. You know, inside, I got to make it compliant. And then outside is the thought that we want to have exterior bathrooms for the public who are in and around that area, so they don't have to come into the powerhouse or the carriage barn or into Waveney House proper, right? We're trying to stop foot traffic and all those. And then during the winter, they necessarily have a place to go, right? So we have an outdoor bathroom at that facility. And right now I don't have a location because the what's going to happen to the potting shed, whether it's bathrooms or a black box theater, you know, rehearsal space or what have you, or another use, don't know yet. So I need a little bit of direction, right? Because right now I'm at a stasis point with both, and it's a little bit difficult, right? Because I have to make the building compliant, and then should create outdoor bathrooms, right? That's where we're at. So,
Rita.
Yeah, I just visited actually the Powerhouse Theater and had a conversation with Patricia as well. And I mean, I wonder if we can just think creatively about this. Is there a way to, and I know she needs to, she's going to put things together maybe a little better for people to understand, but is there a way to, if we did the renovation and the outdoor, and I'm sorry, and the ADA bathrooms and the outdoor bathrooms for the public, can we wait on the potting shed? Can that just be wait till next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely, it's a conversation that we're going to have.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is I think maybe we could be creative about it and come up with something if we didn't want to do the whole
if you're not
shebang right
going
now.
to utilize the potting shed, you don't have to do anything to it at present. It's just sitting there.
Right.
You know, the thought is that eventually we're going to have to seal up the outside of the building, you know, with a new roof and then put a floor in it because you'd like to use it.
Right.
It's one of the mandates from, you know, the building use committee was the fact that let's use the buildings that we have, right? So trying to find a use for it. So, but yeah, you don't necessarily have to drive forward with it. You know, if you built the buildings at an annex or the bathrooms in an annex, well, I have the bathrooms in an annex and the potting shed sits, right? And then you focus on the lobby expansion and the bathrooms inside, and you have a win, and then you determine what you want to do with the potting shed later. So you can tackle them without doing anything to the potting shed, or you can tackle it with. It really comes down to what the palette is for everybody.
The Lapham Community Center, CHP, didn't they just get the new, after the emergency boiler, was that 3 years ago?
2 years ago, yeah.
2 years ago,
Right.
the new boiler, would this replace that new boiler?
No, it would
Or-
not. No,
Okay, so it's
this
something-
is for, you know, generate electricity and then take a little bit of the heat off on the shoulder months, things like that. We would still need the boiler itself during the dead of winter, right? But during the shoulder months, we might be able to turn that boiler off and work the CHP with the spillover heat that comes from it. We might, on the shoulder months of the year, we might be able to take care of that situation. But the electricity, we should be able, what we're generating, we should be able to take it off the grid.
And then just with the nature center, does the town have a contract with the nature center that we're supposed to maintain the buildings? to a
The
certain-
lease says that we're supposed to, and it actually says we're supposed to provide one maintenance person. You know, we kind of take care of that through John's forces, and they go and they'll do the work, right? We plow the area, we cut the grass, we take care of the trees, but the lease actually says we're supposed to have one person full-time working for the nature center. We feel that if we bring our crew down there, you know, our 12-man crew at that point in time for a week's worth of work, well, in essence, you've gotten pretty close to full-time at that point. So they work through the year instead of having a guy, but the lease does say that we're supposed to provide a man.
All right, we're pushing 10 o'clock, so.
Sorry, Steve,
That's
I'm
all right.
working,
That's all right.
trying, you know,
I feel bad for these guys. And you
those guys.
And you guys started early
You
too.
guys have been listening to me talk too long. So the highway department is at $508,000. We have a two-wheel dump sander. We try to replace one every 15 years, okay? So to give you an idea of where that one stands, that one, just to give you an idea, it's a 2004. I know you were asking last night about what we are on replacement costs, or when we decide to replace things. It's a 2004 model. It's 15 years old. excuse me, it's more than that. It's almost 20 years old. It's 18 years old. It's driven for 56,000 miles in a circle, taking care of storms. It's fought approximately 400 snowstorms, right? So it's about time that we put her to bed. Okay. That low boy truck that we have it's for $78,000. It's an 11-year-old model. Okay. And that has 75,000 miles in it. And it's fought somewhere on the order of 140 storms. Okay. To give you an idea. And then we have a loader replacement for $165,000. That loader is has a high hours on it. It's got 11,000 hours. Once we get past the 10,000 hour mark, we want to start seeing about trying to get rid of it. So by the time we get rid of it, we'll be at the 12,000, 13,000 hour mark. It's about the time we want to turn those things over. That's a 2009 model. We try to get rid of those about every 15 years. We got them in our budget to do that. And then we have our equipment refurbishing item at $25,000 and a pavement hot box. The hot box itself is we can put material, old material, curbing and what have you into a hot box, heat it overnight, and in the morning have hot material, especially during the winter months. We can actually have hot material to put in pothole patching, and we don't have to drive to New York to get material to bring it back, right? You can imagine trying to drive to New York, bring it back, that entire time for that crew waiting for that material to come back is a waste. It's an estimate that this thing will pay for itself in one season. All right, we already have one, we'd like a second. On the transfer station side, we have the replacement of the landfill mower for $67,000. Our existing one is 23 years old because that's when we capped the landfill 23 years ago. So we bought a landfill mower. This is one that can actually drive on steep slopes and not tip over. It's utilized pretty much every week during the season. And at the end of 23 years, I think it's time to replace. On the parks maintenance side, it's $381,000. John has a low boy in at 78,000. It's the exact same vintage, the exact same usage as the highway one. We have a utility cart replacement at $25,000. That's 19 years old. The replacement of the mower is 10 years old. The ride-on mower is, we try to replace one per year. It's 8 years old, but it's pretty much our go-to vehicles at that point in time. They're used every single day during the season. Our trailer replacement for 2 trailers, both of them 15 years old. Our leaf box and vacuum. The leaf box is 20 years old. The vacuum is 12 years old. And then we have a 10-year-old mower. The unfortunate thing with this athletic field mower is last year's pricing that we saw, $90,000. This year's pricing, $137,000 because of new diesel emissions, steel problems, and problems with supply chain. And then we have a stand-up infield machine for $32,000. This will allow us to work the infield, every single one of our infields. Our baseball fields are probably the envy of Fairfield County. I know that they're envy of my town, and I don't, so because when I go back home, I rake our fields, right? So, here we have professionals take care of it, and it shows, right? And then on the infrastructure side, it's at $2.5 million. You saw the presentation for $175,000 for Irwin itself. We have $60,000 for field improvements. We go through and take care of safety improvements on all of our baseball fields every year. Some of our soccer areas where the goal mouths get overused and are worn out. And then an irrigation upgrade. We're at the point now where we've done everything we possibly can to keep the systems in play. We're gonna have to start replacing systems. So we're looking at replacing Mead Park, the entire system. Last year, we had 6 separate breaks in that system alone. So it's at that time where it needs to be replaced. We have $220,000 to rebuild the clay courts at Mead Park. We had this in the budget a couple of years ago, and then we moved that to pickleball. If you remember, we actually said, we want pickleball courts, take the money from here, put it in pickleball. It didn't negate the fact that we had to take care of the clay courts. They're 30 years old, so they need to be replaced. The thought is that we might be able to do half and half and separate it so we don't take them too many out of service, and we can actually allow playability. So at the end of the season, we could do 4, and then the beginning of the next season or the end of the next season, do another 4. Dunning Stadium, those are the existing or the original lights for Dunning Stadium. They're 25 years old. We have 2 poles, 2 stanchions that are actually leaning. Right now, if we can't replace the heads on them because they don't satisfy the hurricane load or earthquake loading now, right? So we can leave them and not touch them, right? But the moment we touch them, we have to replace them because we can't do any work on them because they don't satisfy the new code, the new loading codes. So at that point in time, we've got $450,000. This is something that we've adopted, right? In essence, on the park site. We have $50,000 to continue the wall repair at Waveney. If you notice, we've been trying to go all the way down Lapham Road with a stone wall repair. Then we'll start coming back in and start doing some more brick repair. We're partnering with the Conservancy at the service area. So you'll see some work going on in the service area pretty soon for that. We have $55,000 to replace the Mead Park tennis court lights. There are 2 courts that are lit, courts 7 and 8. There, we have $50,000 for backstops and fencing replacement in and around Waveney and our other athletic facilities. And then we get into the big 3 that we have every year, which is Bristow's on phase 3. Should say phase 3, not phase 2. It's for this year's 5-year plan is $100,000. Next year gets a lot less. And the year after that, we're pretty much off the map at that point in time. I think it drops down around $15,000. I think next year is 85 and then 15. The Friends of Bristow just deposited or just gave me a check for $39,000 to take up the work that they're going to be doing at their pavilion, right? So they want to put up a center crossing pavilion and all the work associated with that, the $40,000 amount of work they came forward with and paid for. So that was part of the master plan, but they're paying for that themselves. So they've been putting money in along with the town. Not necessarily on a 1-for-1, but they are putting forward money on the town. And by the time we get done, we'll probably be at a 30% ratio, maybe a little bit higher at that point in time. And then we have $300,000 for both the NCAF and the Waveney Conservancy for future projects, right? The NCAF is going to come forward with a plan for Dunning Stadium for June of next year. So they're just starting to finish their plans for that area. Then they're going to go out with a large fundraising capability and then come back in, show you what they want to do, and then we'll get approval for the project and move forward and do that in June of next year. And the Conservancy has you saw their Conservancy's 5-year plan of what they want to do. They want to start with the entrances. John and I met with them. They want to start with the entrances of Waveney, start with the service area and get a little bang for their buck as far as coming into the entrance and see what you can do as far as beautifying and replanting the area. So John's got over like 20 separate locations of concern throughout for this $2.5 million. Any questions on parks?
Are there any plans to widen the road?
No, not at present. Right now, it's a nice traffic calming effect. Those trees are giving a nice bend and slowing traffic, right? If we try to widen that road, we'll just see speeds increase at that point in time. So the thought is to try not to.
Yeah.
It's more of an accounting question. I'm just curious why Dunning, anything with Dunning having to do with Dunning is a town thing and not a school thing.
Because at the time that the MOU came forward for the NCAF, it was determined that Dunning Stadium would now be taken care of by the town. So that's why John's budget's increased for maintenance of Dunning itself, and then why things of this nature are coming forward from us. So it was just as part of the MOU, with the development of the MOU with the Athletic Foundation, it was determined that Dunning itself, maintenance of Dunning would be on the town side, and then improvements to Dunning would be by the NCAF, and then they would put money aside for later, right? So now, right, they're doing a 50-50 kind of thing, 50 for new projects and 50% towards the things that are already have been done. So the resurfacing, basically to take care of the reskinning of the turf fields going forward. Right. So that's their, right now, that's their split. That was the MOU's, the determination was a 50-50.
Was it ever the schools'
It
responsibility?
was not the schools. It was basically, there was the booster club. It was supposed to stand alone. So it was the booster club itself. It was never necessarily the BOE, right? The BOE didn't put money into it. It was the booster club that put money into it.
Yeah, so every year the Booster Club raised money to pay for maintenance, fencing at Dunning,
That's what I
keeping
was
up
thinking.
things. They've paid for all kinds of, fence repair, light repair, et cetera. And finally got to the point where, it needed to be handled by somebody, because if that fundraising dried up and something is needed, it falls to.
It's
the
similar to the
town.
track and the tennis courts, right? So we rebuilt the track, we rebuilt the tennis courts, we maintain the track and the tennis courts. It's not a BOE.
Right, but I think the public uses that more often. Like I see that. I can understand that a little bit more
So-
than having it be on the town side.
One of the
for
things
Dunning.
that we didn't talk about with these lights is that, the new lights, when you put, a lot of that is the poles and the lights themselves, but the operation of the lights, that if you switch all those lights up there to LED, the payback is it'll pay for itself over. I don't know how
Eventually,
many
yeah.
years,
I mean, right now,
but
we're I think it's $23,000, $24,000 is the electrical charge for the Dunning Stadium lights. So yeah, you'll see a commensurate drop at that point in time when we change over to LED, because right now we're on the old fashioned bulb at present. I don't, so we'll pay you know, it'll take time to pay for itself, but we should see, you know, maybe an $8,000 savings or something of that nature.
And if we ever get the solar hooked up to it too, that'll be,
That's the secondary phase, right? Is to try to put a portion on the school, at the high school, and then have one of the meters tied in to that. And then you'll see you know, it might not be a 1-for-1, but we'll definitely see a drop.
Huge fan of the baseball fields here. Having been coaching my sons for the last 5 years.
That's John.
Top notch. I remember when I was growing up playing and sliding into home and there was like broken glass and what have you. And my kids now play. It's absolutely fantastic. And now coaching travel for my son, Jack, 9 years old. Very excited. Everyone is fired up to get back onto, they're chomping at the bit to get onto the fields. I know that it's been terrible with all the rain, but anything to get us out onto the fields quicker would be appreciated.
Every day. We want to be out there too.
And maybe a time for a conversation for another time, Tiger, but I'd like to hear about the irrigation, and you say it's 6 different cycles and things need to be replaced. I mean, you know, there could be some fundraising, it doesn't have to be from the town to do so.
Okay, yeah, we can sit with John and we can, you know,
I'd be happy
figure
to
it
do
all
that.
out.
Excellent job.
Yeah, I took a picture of after one time that they had prepared Mead Field, you know, the big field. I took a picture of it and then showed it to my guys in Cheshire, right? So, you know, CYB, right? Cheshire Youth Baseball. And they were like, where is that? Is that Fenway? I was like, no, that's basically that's the outfield of Mead Stadium. So, you know, because it had a beautiful design in it. You could see it, you know, it was all like a parquet flooring, it was beautiful. And so yeah, no, they do an excellent job. So one of the things we had in there that I didn't talk about was we had the playground, right? So it's $450,000 for the playground. So we kind of should necessarily talk about the fact that it's in here. So it's not just the playground, it's the playground and the athletic facility or the workout facility, the adult fitness area, right? So our thought is that we don't have a playground in Waveney and we're having children play on the adult fitness area to the point where, you know, some are getting injured and almost severely, right? So we had a girl almost lose her finger, right? That's a bad thing, right? So, but it's an attractive nuisance. They want to, you know, the parents are like, oh, let's go play, right? So go play. They think they can go play on it. It's not necessarily for them. So what we'd like to do at the time is come forward with an entire plan, right? And redo the adult fitness area because it's past its useful life, right? We've got about another year left in it where at that point in time, we're just gonna have to come in with a backhoe and start ripping the ones out that we can't repair. We're just gonna have to take them out of service, just basically rip them out of the ground. And then put in an entire poured in place surface because the kids are out there all seasons of the year, but the mulch necessarily freezes during the winter. You have problems with it. It's not necessarily traversable as easily as other things. We'd like to put in a poured in place surface that we have at other parks like Mead Park. And then have both facilities, one for children, you know, basically up to 12 years old, and then the adult fitness area. And the adult fitness area is used almost every single day. And it's a replacement from what was there prior, right? So before then there was a fitness trail and a couple of the stations were in that location. And then there was a fitness trail around Waveney where you could stop at stationing. Now you actually go to one location, can do your training and then hit the trail system and then come back, right? And it's used every single day. But the thought is that Waveney is our only park that doesn't have and it's, you know, our most heavily used park and it doesn't have a playground area. So last year it got tabled. They were asked to go back and find a location for it. Park and Rec unanimously approved a location here in the center of the park. And then Board of Selectmen approved it, Board of Finance approved it. You know, they went through a very deep dive into it and took a look at it and approved it. And now we're here, you know, at this point in time saying that, you know, it should go forward. You know, so it's an item that's inside that I didn't necessarily touch on. But our feeling is exactly that, right? That we can make it whereby the kids come to the playground first and the adult fitness area is behind it. And the adult fitness area is necessarily fenced off. So you can't get to the adult and fitness area. And we give the kids a way to get to the playground first. So they won't necessarily go to the adult fitness area, you know, later. And that's sort of a backstop to the road. So the kids won't go past, right? So the thought is to keep them where they are. But the thought is that they're going to go there and they're going to play, right? So we should necessarily give them something to play on. It's, you know, it's while mom and dad are watching somebody play soccer or softball, what are we doing with the siblings, right? Siblings want to do something and some of them will run around the outside of the field, but after a while, they're going to get bored with that and they're going to want to go someplace else. So instead of having them drive to Mead Park or some other facility, we should be providing one inside Waveney. So that's that. And then, I don't know if there are any other questions on parks maintenance itself or parks infrastructure.
I have a question
Sure.
regarding the ice skating rink. I
Sure.
understand that there's going to be some paving in the parking lot.
Yeah. The
So
parking
is
lot
that in this
itself,
budget?
it's actually in my budget. Yeah, it's in the
Okay.
parking lot area, right? So the parking lot was all millings.
Mhm.
Okay, we built it out of millings, pavement millings from our roads. We saved a ton of money by taking the millings from the contractor and building the area out because it was all dirt, right? So the thought is now everyone thinks it's paved because it's, you know, it's been driven on, the sun's baked it, they all think it's paved. So they say, you got to go fix that pothole. We're like, it's not a pothole. It's just basically part of the, the material, right? So the thought is to come in and resurface it all. And now that the rink is placed there, we necessarily have to give them a better area. The grade change, you saw the grade change to try to put the rink in, right?
Right.
We're going to try to lessen that grade change. Do a little bit of work on the drainage, do the guide rail around it, and then make it fit. Right now, if you look at it from an aerial point of view, it looks like an elbow, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a kidney. We're trying to make it square it up so we're a little bit more efficient in our parking spaces and a little bit efficient in our use of space, and then be able to place the rink properly where it should be on a flatter grade. So the install and takedown, a lot easier in the end. A lot of the other facilities that they have, they're on a parking area or on the grades are a lot more friendly. So we're going to try to make those grades friendly. We just couldn't get to it this year because when we went to our contractors to talk about, whether or not they had it in their schedule, they couldn't necessarily fit in their schedule. They were too busy and I didn't want to cram it in. We said, listen, we're just going to have to go with it this year. And they went with it, so we just need a little bit more material and that was provided by Carp Associates free. So it was a nice donation. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? The Nature Center, we talked about it. So they cut the Audubon House roof out. We have 4 other areas of concern. We have to put another roof on a portion of the visitor center. The Herb Cottage, we need some painting and repairs. The Cider House needs roof repairs and the Rock House needs a roof replacement. That's basically what we're going to, it's just trying to keep up the exterior of each one of those buildings and try to knock off some of them as we go. And then lastly, we're on the wastewater treatment facility. He's at a $1.2 million request. All of this money is coming out of the capital reserve, right? So you guys asked about whether or not we have a maintenance reserve elsewhere. This is what Todd was talking about last night, and the fact that this is probably one of our most shining examples of what we should do by putting money aside, right? So all the money that comes in from septage, 85% of the money that comes in from our septage fees of $400,000 a year gets driven into our major maintenance reserve fund. 15% goes into the operating side, 85% goes into the major maintenance reserve, because we know that the plant's 23 years old, right? So all of these are replacements of existing or the first installation, right? So the clarifier drive at $80,000, that's the second one. We did one last year, we're doing one this year. And then our UV system at $815,000. We went to our consultant, we had that spread over 2 years, have the consultant come in and design it and then come in and bid it, right? Problem is that she's 25 years old. Parts are almost non-existent we can pre-buy some parts, but they're not really having the parts there. And if it fails, we're in a bad situation because that's our post-treatment. That's our last treatment before the liquid leaves the plant, right? The water leaves the plant at that point in time. We need that system. So the thought is before she fails, we want to get on top of it. And since the consultant said they could do it all in one cycle, meaning they could design it, bid it, and install it in 1 year, we combine the whole thing together because we had the major maintenance reserve. If I didn't have the sewer reserve, I would have had to do it over 2 years and hope that I wouldn't have it. But since I have ample money in the reserve, we got $3 million in the reserve. We're able to do certain things like this, whereby, we can take a major capital item and replace them in one shot because we have the money set aside.
Steve? Tiger, is this like a car where it breaks down and you got to start from scratch, or you can just keep using the facility by piecing?
In the facility, these are not the concrete. This is not the bones, right?
Yeah,
This,
so the bones stay forever. I mean,
it's just pretty much, hopefully stay forever. We might get to the point via permit that we've got to do something, and eventually, not for nothing, it's concrete, right? I mean, it's well made, well constructed, but eventually we're gonna have to do some work in and around the facility. But yeah, these are the clarifier drive, that's all metal, right? That's basically what stirs it all up, right? That's stirring the liquid up. So that's all the guts inside, but the concrete on the outside, everything else on the outside, no, that's staying. So yeah, I guess the bones of the plant stay. We got to do a little bit on the meat. So that ends the presentation. I don't know if you have anything else. I'm sorry that it went a little long. I tried my best.
Rita, you have one more?
I just have a general question. And I'm not even sure if you can answer this, but is there anything that can be done to minimize power outages that the town can do?
Great question. I think Eversource is doing a really nice job on their, on their tree trimming process. They're trying to attack the areas where they see the most power outage, but we benefit from the fact that we have a huge tree canopy. A lot of other towns do not.
A huge, I'm sorry, what?
Tree canopy.
Oh, tree canopy.
We are completely tree covered. We went from a farming community, then changed over to now we are basically, if you take a look at where we are, and take a look from a GIS standpoint, just look at an aerial, we have trees everywhere, right? So it beautifies the town. It's absolutely beautiful, but we run that problem, right? Cheshire, my town, right, is a farming community, but they never went back to allow trees to come back, right? So in the right of way, you look in the right of way, there are no trees in the right of way, virtually none, okay? So power outages for us, virtually non-existent. When storm comes through, hurricane comes through, I lost power once so far in the 23 years that I've been there for a long period of time. I had lost it for an hour, maybe something fell, one kind of thing. But the last time I lost it for 7 days, but that was because something hit an entire transformer facility, right, that went down. And I was out for 7 days. But other than that, if a tree didn't hit that sucker, nothing, So we benefit from the fact that we have this tree canopy. The town is absolutely beautiful, but we pay that price. Eversource is out there tree trimming, but we can't necessarily stop the wind from blowing. And the only way to do it would be to cut everything that could fall on the wires
Or
out,
go underground.
right? Underground. So that's a great question. We looked at, when we did Main Street, okay, we looked at putting everything underground, okay? At that time, it was $5 million a mile. Okay, $5 million a mile. And we had to give them a $500,000 non-refundable engineering deposit towards them to study it. Basically 10% of the cost. Okay. And then they said, we $500,000 to study. And then they could have come back and said, no, it's not that much money. It's more. Right. And we would have been out to 500 grand. So it's a lot of money to try to drop them underground because you have to go to everybody's house. Right. You can imagine trying to drop all the communications down, put everything underground, find an area for it, first of all, because a lot of our right of way is constrained, and then satisfy everybody's house, running lines through everybody's front yard or up everybody's driveway.
Stone walls.
Forget about it. It's a great idea. And, the newer developments in town are all underground, right? I'm in a newer development in Cheshire. It's 23 years old, but it's all underground. It's fantastic, right? Because they planned it that way, right? But everything old, no. It's very, very difficult, to be honest with you. We would be better served to give everybody a generator than we would to try to do that work, aesthetics aside,
Thanks.
All right. Tiger, thank you very much.
Oh, you got to thank them. You don't
And
thank
thank
me.
you
Thank
guys.
them.
Thank
Really,
you.
thank you. All you do.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. If you have any other questions for me,
Well, Mo said he wants to say a few words. He likes to speak.
yeah, you put him on the spot last time. That wasn't fair last time.
Just kidding, Mo. Thank you guys for everything you do. We'll see you soon.
Problem. Thank you very much.
All right. Do we have enough energy to do committee reports or do you want to table them again? Okay. Do we have a motion to table committee reports? Mike Morrow, second. Robin Bates, Mason.
Hold on.
All in favor of tabling committee reports? Aye, that's a unanimous.
I
Thank
say
you,
yes.
Hillary. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Christina, second. Tim, all in favor?
I don't know why.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you, Hillary.
Good night,
Thank you.
guys.
Night.
See you next Tuesday.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Lights for running doesn't.
On here, this